Coming up, we've got Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time on, and we're going to continue his trip through Seagal's DTV oeuvre with Out for a Kill. So probably one of the funniest, most entertaining of Seagal's DTV movies. It's definitely up there. And I mean, we got some hilarious stuff coming, right? We've got monkey style, climbing on the wall, Spider-Man kind of fight scenes. We've got, throwing samurai swords from second story windows and beheading people. It's just, it's all, we've got a professor. We've got Seagal as an archaeology professor. Just stay tuned. This is definitely going to be a fun one. And of course, we hit the usual spots, right? So if you get your bingo card out for what I've got Scott on, we cover international football. We talk about prestige movies or prestige cinema. So it's all going to be there. So just stay tuned for that in a little bit. Then next week we've got Chris Kavinsky, Chris the Brain from Bulletproof Action on. We'll be looking at the AIP classic Invasion Force. So I figured with Chris, we've had him on. We've covered a Cannon film with American Ninja 2. We've covered a PM flick when we looked at The Sweeper. We've covered a Sedaris movie the last time he was on. We looked at Return to Savage Beach. So we figured we had to get AIP in, and this is one that I know he was a big fan of. So stay tuned for that next week. We'll kind of finish out the year with that episode. And then we actually have a couple for next month already in the can. So Will from Exploding Helicopter will be on. We'll be looking at the theme for the episode is Nepo babies. So we'll be looking at a movie that has Weston and Nicolas Cage, 211, and then also a movie with Scott Eastwood. It's going to be called Dangerous. So look for that one. First episode of the new year, and then Ty from Globus. We've already done his monthly hit as well, where we looked at rappers in movies. We look at a movie called Turf War / Lady Rider with Fat Joe, and then we're going to be looking at a movie with Pitbull called Blood Money. So so stay tuned for that next month as well. In terms of the site, you may have noticed that I just barely got the most recent post, the one on Chris Claremont's X-Men, the documentary on Chris Claremont's X-Men. I just barely got that post in before the end of the weekend, my time. So it was like 11:30, I think, p.m. on Sunday night. So this next post is going to be on Animal Instincts this weekend. It might be a similar situation. You just never know with the holidays when I can find time to write these. So keep that in mind, that it could be a little bit. And then as we get into next year, I think I'll probably stick with another one that we did on a podcast. I'll probably do Cash Out after that one, but then start mixing in some movies that we haven't covered on podcast yet, as I kind of get out of the holiday area and kind of get into more regular, regularly scheduled Matt time, I guess. I don't know. It is like, even with us not having any kids, I think part of it is the holidays. There's like a lot of unwinding kind of time, and so there's not a lot of time for podcasts and things like that. So just keep that in mind. But sometime this weekend we'll do Animal Instincts, which is one that Mitch from the Video Vacuum and I covered on a previous episode. I think that is everything that we've got coming up here. I think the other thing, we've had some purchases of Nadia and Aiden. So for everybody who's bought that one, thank you so much. I know John Crossman After Movie Diner, he posted on his Instagram the copy of himself with the book. So we know he's purchased it there. It's available on Amazon. The link is going to be in the podcast description here. Always appreciate if somebody wants to pick that up. But again, we've made a few sales already, so always happy to have some more. But again, if you're buying that this time of year, it is like the perfect Christmas present, for both the person that you're buying it for, and at this point it probably would be a belated Christmas present because it's already when this episode posts, it's going to be Christmas Eve. But it also is a great Christmas present to the site. So if you appreciate what we're doing here and you want to throw us a few bucks, buying my book is the best way. And then you've got a book that you can put on your shelf as well. Or if you'd rather not have the book taking up room on your shelf, you can always do the Kindle version for like $3.99, I think it is, something like that. It's definitely cheaper. If you don't want the book on your shelf, Kindle is the way to go that way. But because I always appreciate that. And of course, any of my books, so a lot of people start off with the first one, Chat and Accounting. By all means, go for that one as well. So you can go to my author page for that, and you can see all the books that I have there, both on Amazon and in Kindle. I think Chat and Accounting is not as difficult a one to find on Amazon. I mean, Nadia and Aiden is easy. You just type in Nadia and Aiden. The way Aiden is spelled, it's just Nadia backwards, so it's AIDAN for the Aiden part. But when you type that one, I think it's like the first thing that comes up. Chat and Accounting is pretty close to the top. You never know with these titles what's going to be the one. I'm starting to kind of get better at my titles to make sure there's something that sits at the top. Because I think my second novel I named A Girl and a Gun. and it ended up getting pushed way down on the results from like these like 10 movie female action themed movies kind of pack deals. So you never know what's going to cause your movie to kind of fall down the list of results. But yeah, I think that my third novel, Holtman Arms, anybody who had the name Holtman that wanted to get their crest of arms, you could buy that online. So that was what was causing that one's search results to go down. I think Don's House in the Mountains and Bainbridge do okay as well. But yeah, Natty and Aiden, I think that's like the first result that comes up. So I'm trying to do better at making my titles something that will come up, when you search for them. But yeah, anytime anybody wants to buy any of my books, I always appreciate it. It's always a great way to support the site as well. I think, at this stage, I'm trying to think of stuff that we need to buy to kind of improve the podcast. I think the big one right now is the mic. I got to get a noise canceling mic because that's one of the things I've noticed with Clean Feed. When I record on Clean Feed versus Skype has its own noise canceling, and so that's why when my mic isn't canceling noises, Skype takes care of it for me. So it's a little bit of a cleaner audio than when I do Clean Feed, where I've got to kind of mute myself here and there, or see if turn the volume in a certain way or something like that. And you can kind of sometimes hear some static in the background. So that's probably our next big purchase. But yeah, any kind of money like that always helps with those kinds of things, or helps with me getting out to see movies and things like that, being able to bring you more content here on those kinds of things. Yeah, but that is everything. So again, for everybody listening here, whether you listen to this on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or Boxing Day / Hanukkah, wish everybody happy holidays. Wish you all the best. It's been a really fun year here at the Direct Video Connoisseur. I couldn't have done any of this without the support from listeners here. We've been charting well in the United States for film and movie reviews, but also the UK, Norway, Sweden, Austria, Germany, and New Zealand, of course, seems to always come up, and recently even Japan. So, listeners all around the world, maybe you don't celebrate Christmas, or for example, if you're in Japan and you're having some Kentucky Fried Chicken, I hope you have a great holiday as well. But also, I know in those Nordic countries, since you were the ones who created all of the traditions that we use for Christmas, happy holidays to you as well. But thank you everybody for all the support, and yeah, we're gonna try to make 2025, right? We're already in 2024 this year. 2025, an even better year. So thank you, everybody. And we'll do the theme song here from John Cross at After Movie Diner. When we come back, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time will be on. And we're going to talk some Steven Seagal. Welcome back to the DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and joining us today, we have a guest who's been on enough that I guess he's beyond the very special guest stage, but he'll always be a very special guest in our hearts. Welcome back, Scott Murphy, from All 90s Action All the Time.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much for having me back on. It's always a pleasure to come on this show and talk about Steven Seagal again.
Yes, well, I was going to ask it. I think a good place for us to start, as always, is the wellness check. How are you doing this far into the Steven Seagal oeuvre?
Well, not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, we had the Quest trilogy was hard. It was hard getting through a couple of those, particularly Attack Force and Flight of Fury. But then we had. What did we have after that? We had Pistol Whipped, which was a very fun one. And the last time I was on, we talked about the Foreigner, which wasn't as great as you rated it back in the day, but definitely was entertaining. We had fun talking about that, and I'll definitely have fun talking about this one. So doing all right. I don't know. Ask me again a few movies from now. When it's slim pickings, it could all change, but You know, this is I think the seventh Seagal movie we've covered now, and I'm doing all right at this stage. But I do realise if we plan to do all of his DTV ones, we still have like another, I don't know, like 60 to go or something like that, or 50 to go. I'm not very sure. I've not counted, but you know, like so it's still a long way off. But yeah, for now, fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's like it's in the 30s because
Oh,
I think he's not quite in the 40 club on the
oh.
DTV connoisseur site. So I think we've got like maybe like 31 to go, something like that. So it's I mean still a lot to go. I know
Still a long road ahead of us,
yes,
man.
and we've got some of the real stinkers. I think like when you talk to some of the people that like the guys that come up in or Bulletproof or Mitch Video Vacuum, like some of the worst to come. We still have like Belly of the Beast is one they'll tell you like oh stay away from that. Kill Switch. You know we picked probably one of the most fun ones to finish out the year with, Out for a Kill. And I think this is one that we've talked about. It's like you said, it's come up on multiple episodes, especially last episode, because this is the second of two that were directed by Michael Oblowitz.
Yes, that's right. And we weren't quite sure which direction to go with. Either this one, which is it's got the Oblowitz connection, or Black Dawn, which is the second Jonathan Cold movie. We
Right.
decided to go for this one, which I have seen before, rather than Black Dawn, which apparently is terrible. But well, I'm sure we'll cover that probably next. But anyway, we'll do this one, which is a lot of fun and has some of the best bizarre Seagal like if you're this far deep in Seagal cinema, um, this is what you want. It's got a lot of your Seagal tropes, and it has it, probably one of the kind of peak weird moments in it. One of the peak craziest kind of like the kind of things that go viral and like about Seagal movies to kind of show off like how terrible Seagal is or how kind of ridiculous he is. Like this has one of the peak moments of that genre of viral kind of YouTube. Like what is going on in this film? But we'll get to that later. But anyway, yes, yes. So no, this should be a fun chat.
Yes, and it's funny because that moment that you were talking about, I won't spoil it. Like you said, we'll kind of keep it for the end there. But I saw that moment on when this movie aired on USA. That's what I saw
Mm-hmm.
was that moment. But at that time, USA Network here in America, which I guess right now with that's one of the Comcast cable channels. It looks like Comcast has taken all of their cable networks. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. We were just talking about this before the show that we've got.
Oh yes, I can.
Yeah,
I can. I'm
yeah.
so sorry.
That's all right, no worries. But Comcast, the major cable operator here in the United States, they own all of the NBC and a whole bunch of cable networks and Universal Studios. That's them, like Wicked, that movie. That's Comcast. They
Mm.
took all their cable channels and they've essentially put them on a virtual barge, and they're just letting them die off somewhere. And USA Network is one of those because cable just doesn't make any money in America anymore. Um, but in the 2000s, you could turn on the USA Network and get any number of Seagal movies, Dolph Lundgren movies, all kinds of fun stuff that they had on there. And this movie that we're about to talk to, I saw it. I saw this one piece that we're going to talk about, and spent years trying to find this movie, figure out which one it was. And when I started the site in '07, I was just getting every Seagal DTV flick, hoping it was the movie. And eventually, I finally caught it. Eventually, I figured. But again, those were the days where you just watched the movie on TV. You didn't really know what it was that necessarily, unless somebody told you what it was, or you could see it in the TV guide, and none of that information was available to me. So this was part of a quest to find this movie again. It was almost like a romantic comedy, right? Like Sleepless in Seattle or something. I was there on the Empire State Building, right, looking for my Seagal movie, and I was about to leave, right, and then suddenly there it was. I had to go back and get my backpack, and there was the Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah, no, no, no.
Right, exactly.
Sounds like quite the epic journey
Yes,
to go on to find this particular film.
right, of all movies, yes. Now, as we get stuck in, a couple interesting facts about this one. This is an Emmett Furla Oasis production, which, of course, they become famous, right? Emmett Furla, Randall Emmett in particular, they become famous for that whole series of like Bruce Willis, what they called geezer flicks, right, or whatever, where he's just like propping Bruce Willis up and set up Bela Lugosi style, feeding him lines and getting him through as many movies as possible. This is that production company. This is actually the third movie, I think, or the second one that they've done with Seagal. So Randall Emmett, the producer, he actually worked with him on a couple other Seagal movies. He worked with him on Half Past Dead, I believe. But then Ticker, the one we talked about previously, Ticker was an Emmett Furla Oasis film. So this is kind of early on for them. I think their first movie that they did was Escape to Grizzly Mountain. So they started with what's his face, Dan Haggerty. They moved their way up to Seagal. But eventually they dump Seagal and move on to like bigger names. They start getting like De Niro, obviously Bruce Willis, that's the biggest one. People like that. But this was kind of how they started. Val Kilmer's another one they do a lot of films with kind of, early on in their process. And the idea with a movie like Out for a Kill is that they would make it direct to video for the American market, but then put it overseas and see how much they could get that way. According to IMDb, this made about $500,000 overseas, which as people said, like especially Ty from Will from Exploding Helicopter, that like you can't always trust IMDb's numbers because they're crowdsourced. But that was kind of the deal. That was their process. That's kind of how we get a lot of these Seagal movies. It's Emmett Furla Oasis, in particular. Let's go to Bulgaria, make these movies, and see how much we can get from the overseas sales. But then for us in America, we got them, and I guess probably in the UK, where you would have been at the time, it would have been direct to video.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this would have been like a direct to DVD release.
Yeah.
In the UK for sure. For sure. I think like mind you, I don't really. No, I was just thinking about the box office. I think the box office numbers, as far as I know, I'm not sure this was always the case, but as far as I know, IMDb are connected to Box Office Mojo, which is where they get their numbers from. And that's an okay site. I think that the numbers is a better box office site, but Box Office Mojo is fine.
Well, that could, so I wonder, because I think that might be like I wonder if that, okay, so there's an IMDb Pro where you can, I guess if you pay for IMDb Pro, you can get the detailed box office info, so they would tell you, where it came from and all of that. So, also, it lists for 2 countries of origin, it lists Aruba as one of those countries, so not sure what's going on there, if there's some sort of tax shelter or something.
That's definitely a tax shelter thing. Right. That is 100%, I'm going to state right now that is 100% a tax shelter thing. And Emmett and Furla can come at me if they want. But, I'm pretty sure, that's exactly the sort of things that would be in, what were they called? Was it the Paradise Papers? Or the kind of, the big, of all the kind of tax shelters and stuff like that. That it was like a kind of Guardian investigation into all the kind of tax shelter stuff, and that definitely sounds like the sort of thing that would be in that. If you see things like that, it's like in Europe, if somebody's got their company filed in Luxembourg or something, it's like. That is a paper company. That is a tax dodge. For sure.
This it's almost like the trifecta, right? Is that you've got the Millennium Films guys, right? The learners, and Emmett Furla, who are just getting the hang of this thing, so they're learning from the best, right, on how to make it on the cheap, dodge taxes, all of that kind of stuff. We've got Aruba listed as one of the countries, and then we're shooting everything in Sofia, Bulgaria. So it's like you're hitting all of the notes that you want for low budget DTV Seagal, especially in the early 2000s.
Absolutely. I mean, I even put that in my notes. I put Millennium Films, sign of quality. That's
Yeah, you know what you're getting when you start seeing like that thing kind of writing in there and all of that. So yeah, so there's that there. Now, one on a kind of a more, I don't say grim note, but again, something that's come up on a few of these Seagal movies, or at least one other Seagal movie so far, is
oh yeah.
allegations of sexual harassment. Which here in the trivia we've got actress Rachel Grant, who said that she went out to Bulgaria to do this movie, and she was meeting with Seagal and director Michael Oblowitz. Oblowitz left the room, and she said that he assaulted her at that point, and she of course pushed back and said that she was released from the film due to her refusal to submit to him. So yeah, I think we're gonna get probably a trail of these kinds of things as we, it's one of those things with the Seagal thing that like there's like I don't call it the dirtier underbelly of Seagal, but I think when Flight of Fury we found out that the actress there was kind of they tried to coerce her into doing a nude scene, and so in this case we've got something else here. So yeah, it's always stuff like that with Seagal.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. There's always that kind of horrible, seedy kind of stuff that seems to go on in a lot of these Seagal productions, and of course, I guess what makes it worse is that like Seagal throughout his career has always had a lot of creative control. Is often a producer on his own films, so like um, yeah, it's like he is in the position of power, and on a Seagal set in a lot of these Seagal films, he is kind of the he wants to be top dog, and he makes sure that he finds a way that he is top dog, and that's yeah, yeah. So it's pretty horrible. It's like we've kind of discussed before. I guess um, I mean, you don't have to separate anything if you don't want to. Like, I mean, if you don't want to watch these films because like Seagal's a piece of shit, then that's fine. That's totally understandable. I think as we've discussed many times before, we get a certain level of ironic entertainment um, through these movies. Well, some of them, a lot of them, but not all of them. But we do, and it's fun to kind of watch the bizarreness of an ego out of control. Like but these people are kind of fascinating. It's like it's why I'm despite the fact that they're horrible people, it's why I'm interested in Hulk Hogan or Vince McMahon or any of these deranged psychopathic narcissists. Uh, they're kind of it's interesting to kind of look into the really dark psychology of that, and but there is also something kind of weirdly humorous about it, just because they they almost none of these people, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Vince McMahon, whether it's Hulk Hogan, whether it's Steven Seagal, whether it's Vladimir Putin, like none of these people seem real. Like they don't seem like if you wrote these people as like a Bond villain, or like you'd be like, well, this is a bit on the nose. This is a bit kind of cartoonish, isn't it? Don't you think it's a bit outrageous? Like are people going to buy into this? Are people, like, and I think that's kind of what makes them kind of fascinating while also being equally, utterly repellent.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly to your point. I think it's one of those things where it's like it's good that we're knowing these things. I think it's good that these stories are getting out, and so that for example, in this case, actor Rachel Grant, her story is out. That we know these things about these characters, so that we can have the full story whenever we're watching a movie like this. And then, like you said, we're not watching this because we're like, rah rah, Seagal's the best, right? We're watching this to get a kick out of this ego gone wild and the things that happen in these movies because of that. That there's sort of this pretzel twisting that the filmmakers have to go through to assuage this guy's ego. And also, too, I think the fact that somebody like a Randall Emmett, who has been accused of similar things, is sort of using Seagal as his launching pad to move on to bigger things. Like once he starts getting people like De Niro and Willis involved, he just cuts Seagal loose, right? He doesn't want anything to do with him, and he doesn't. Not that he doesn't want to do anything, he doesn't need him anymore, so he's done with him. So it's also kind of a fascinating thing with this film that we've got multiple of these sort of toxic personalities and sort of seeing how they come to play. Kind of similar to what you talk about with Trump, where, of course, us in America, we have to sort of live through it a bit, whereas like everybody else can kind of sit there and watch the fun happen. But, you've got like, for example, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has his own big ego, but then you've got the power play of Trump on his jet saying, oh, Robert F. Kennedy, you've got to take a picture of yourself eating McDonald's with the rest of us, even though you said that food's trash. And so sort of seeing some of those interplays, I think is always interesting as well. And like you said, we can kind of watch this and have fun with it. And I think it's always a good thing. It's kind of like when you're eating factory farm sausage or something like that. Like, okay, if you're going to eat factory farm sausage, at least know where it comes from, and it's like, yeah, we're watching the Seagal movies. We know where they come from. And to some extent, like you said, it almost makes it more, I don't say fulfilling, but it makes the process more well-rounded so that we can, when we're making fun of it, we can almost kind of feel more justified in making fun of it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. There's no usually when kind of talking about films, even bad films, usually I kind of try to be fair, on the film, try to be fair on the filmmakers, and try and put myself in the shoes of like, however bad or like shoddy the film is, most of the times, I would say 90% of the time, people are trying to do their best, and things have maybe gone wrong, and even good filmmakers can make bad films. But yeah, there's none of that. There's none of that when talking about Seagal, because like I don't think it's like the comedy thing about the kind of comedy argument about like punching up, punching down. Um, I think that you can. I think you can. Uh, Maybe not the movies as a whole, like because like I think I still try to be fair to like the other actors, and I think I still try to be fair to some of the directors I who are probably struggling because they've been given a tight budget, they've been given a tight schedule, everything that everything about the movie, it's down to its very DNA has to be refracted through Seagal's ego, so that's going to be a fucking trip. So I feel sorry for a lot of these directors, but then I mean, like, I don't know why anybody would work with them more than once, to be honest. Um, but yeah, I feel no guilt about dunking on a lot of these Seagal films, to be honest.
Well, no, and you make a great point about like why no one would work with him more than once. And one of the patterns we've started to see, like whether it's the Koish trilogy or these two Oblowitz films, or even like the Keone Waxman movies, where I think he does like maybe 9 in a row or something like that with Seagal, is that it seems like whoever is involved with the contract writing process, they nail these directors down for multiple movies. So it's almost like they know going in, like, okay. And actually, when you look at Seagal's filmography, and we were just talking about Ticker a second ago, because that's the first one that that Emmett Furlow Oasis, or the EFO production, that's an Albert Pyun film, and that's the only Albert Pyun film that he does with Seagal. He never does another Seagal movie. And I wonder if even they caught it there. They were like, "Oh boy, Pyun doesn't want to do another one of it. He doesn't want to have Seagal do another movie." And Pyun's an interesting case because he's very unique in his filmmaking. He has his own approach, and maybe there's another sense too of like we don't want to work with Pyun because he's a pain in the ass. Which is definitely when Pyun was making movies, he definitely was a pain in the ass. He had his own ideas. But I also wonder too if Pyun was like, "I'm not working with Seagal anymore," and they were like, "Okay, well the next time we do, we get a director, we're going to nail them down for multiple films, because that's what happens here is that we get Half Past Dead, the last gasp at the big budget or big, major theater release thing, but then we get The Foreigner and Out for a Kill, which is kind of in that vein of the two multiple films from one director. They nail all of it down for two movies, and he does both of these back to back. So I wonder, like you said, this idea of nobody wanting to work with him again. I mean, Tony Waxman hasn't worked with him since he stopped doing movies with him. I mean, Koish, we haven't seen another Koish film. So I do think that's part of it, is they just decide, you know what, this is enough for me. I've had my fill. I got my pay. I'm not ever going to do this again.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Because, I mean, who would? Who would? I mean, having to deal with an actor who wants to do as little as possible, and spend most of the film in a big chair if he was really to have his way. And won't do any of his reverse shots. Won't do any of his ADR. So sometimes we get, like, we've had films, even doing a couple of films we've done, where there's been like narration, which is supposed to be Seagal's character, but it's clearly not Seagal doing the narration, or like things like that, or certainly the kind of ADR. I think, I mean, obviously this film doesn't have quite as much stunt double action as some of the films, particularly the films in the Koish trilogy. I think, like, I certainly remember Shadow Man was particularly guilty of, like, I have no idea how much Seagal was in that movie, because that seemed to be a one where there was a lot of stunt double action. And I guess throughout the Koish trilogy, that was the case. All three of those films, it feels like you're getting the barest minimum of Seagal. So at least in this film's favour, I guess, at least you do get more of. He seems to. He's not. He's not reached the level of peak uh, laziness yet. I think he still wants to do things. I guess this is still very early on in his DTV years. This is way back at the beginning, in 2003. So yeah, that's so. I mean, his last theatrical film was obviously Half Past Dead at this stage, which was just the year before in 2002. So I think he's still a little bit more committed than he would be even 2 years later.
Well, that's a fantastic point, because as we start getting in on this, we see some Seagal stuff that we don't see in later films, right? We see kicks, we see kind of full-bodied scenes of him doing stuff. By the same token, like you said, we're also starting to get into a lot of stunt doubling. There's points where you see a guy with a wig that is supposed to be Seagal, and it's clearly a guy with a wig. The other thing, of course, from that ego standpoint, is that his character is supposed to have been born in 1959. I joke about this all the time, that I started the site in '07. At that time, Seagal was born in 1951. Since I've started the site, he's now been born in 1952. So he's, and I guess he hasn't pushed it any further than that, maybe because if it at this stage, people would have enough screenshots probably to show that it was 52 at one point, if he moved it to 53. I think in later films, his characters are born in the 60s. So, at this point in '03, I guess he's close enough that he's not, he wouldn't be that old. Those things that we start, those patterns, so you kind of see the genesis of them here. But at the same time, there's elements of this that, what we say, like, he's, like you said, he's still committed. He's still a little bit more involved, right? He's not just like sitting for most of the movie.
Yeah, no, he's walking around, and he's and like you say, there's definitely some more committed fights we get here. For all the things you can criticize this film about, and for all its shonkiness and for all its kind of weirdness, um, some of the fight scenes. I mean, some of the fight scenes are very very silly, but some of the fight scenes are pretty decent. Like there's a couple of the in terms if you're like hankering after the kind of Seagal slap fight action, like you get a couple of decent doses of that, and so there's definitely there's definitely more in the action department. Like for all, I mean, this is a terrible, terrible film, but it is an enjoyable, terrible, terrible film because and like it rattles along. Like I think like the thing that makes this film more fun than say Attack Force or Flight of Fury. All these films are like about an hour and a half. In fact, without credits, this film's only like an hour and 25 minutes. All the three films that I just mentioned, they're all about an hour and a half. The difference is you get a fight scene every few minutes in this movie, like definitely every 10 minutes or so. And it's something's generally happening, whether it be a fight scene or a shootout, or there's like a car chase. Things happen, and it rattles along, and it's paced quite well, even though there's lots of things that are rubbish about it, which we'll get into. But at least you're like, it goes down easy. It's not like Flight of Fury or Attack Force, which again are only like 90 minutes, but feel like they last for 2 to 3 days. And you're just like, I don't know how long I've been watching this. Has it been 10 minutes? Has it been 10 hours? I don't know. Like it just sucks you into a vacuum of just nothingness, and time and space no longer exist, and you don't no longer know where you are. And whereas this movie, it feels like well, essentially 85-minute movie that bulks it out with like 5 minutes of credits that it actually is.
Yeah, no, you make a great point there because that actually kind of dovetails a bit with a couple things that I was going to set the stage for us here. The fighting you mentioned the fight sequences, and the fight coordinator on this film is let me pull his name up here. Sorry, I had it. Chi-Ho Lau. Hopefully, I'm getting his name right. But he was a stunt coordinator for the Big Hit, the Mark Wahlberg film, but also he was a action director, stunt coordinator for The Killer, the John Woo classic. So he doesn't have a lot of credits to his name, but whenever you can bring in somebody who's on a movie like The Killer, I think that always helps. And then the stunt coordinator was a guy named his name is Cole S. McKay, but if you see in the credits, he's listed as Colin McKay, which is not his name. But he's a guy who's Chris the Brain from Bulletproof brought his name to my attention because I had never really thought of him much before. With the PM days, I always think of Spiro Rosatos, and then guys like Chad Stahelski and Darren Prescott who came up underneath him. But actually, Cole S. McKay is another guy who was big during the PM period, and he was actually more of a stunt coordinator before they brought Spiro Rosatos on in the mid '90s. And for whatever reason, he never quite took off to that Spiro Rosatos level. He did some stunt work on the Transformers movies, but he was never like, Spiro Rosatos, you can just, look at the 2010s and just tick off, however many movies that he, Fast and Furious films, Marvel movies, what would I say? The Expendables films. But Colas McKay, he never quite. He kind of stuck in the DTV world. And now, if you see, he does a lot of Lifetime movies and stuff like that. But interesting that he was the stunt coordinator on this movie. I don't know when we get further on in the Seagal period that we get names like that to do some of these movies. So it is interesting that. We get all the funniness of this movie, but then you get some names that kind of keep the action flowing in a positive way. And like you said, this movie really sticks to an every 15 minutes kind of stunt approach. Interesting though, when we start getting into the Keone Waxman movies, I think we've done one so far, The Keeper, but when we get into those, Keone Waxman has an interesting approach where he brings on what I always call the guy who does the heavy lifting. So he'll have like a Byron Mann or Bren Foster, somebody like that, who does all of the fight scenes so that it sort of mitigates the Seagal sitting for most of the movie kind of thing. But, in '03, we didn't necessarily need that guy doing the heavy lifting. That Seagal did more of it than he used to. But like you said, it keeps to a good clip, which I think always works.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I would much rather, watch a rubbish movie like this that clips along, and has a lot of entertainment value than like like an like I said, like an Attack Force, which just kind of drags and is mainly a movie made up of padding and exposition. At least this is giving you something. It's giving you something to hook onto, and like as much as uh, the movie has like a lot of flaws, like it is entertaining, and or I certainly I think it's entertaining, and like I do feel like there is people putting effort in. Whether it's like some of the fights come off as very silly, but some of them seem pretty good, as we said, and also like the kind of detectives who are kind of on the tail of the gangsters, and also on the tail of Seagal. Like they're like a kind of fairly entertaining duo, I think, and the two actors playing them, Michelle Go and Corey Johnson. I think they do all right. I think they're trying their best, and I think Corey Johnson's kind of like one of those guys that probably don't know the name, but you probably recognize his face, and he's like a kind of shitty cop in this, or a shitty DA agent, with a shitty attitude, and it's kind of the character that I feel like I associate him with. Like he's kind of got that vibe, and he tends to be cast in those type of roles. But I guess like maybe, as we get into it, I guess like maybe we should kind of sum up like what the movie is about, and like, these detectives who we are introduced to in Sophia, which is like way later on in the story. So the opening scene is like way later on timeline wise in the movie than like we go back in time. But they're basically investigating some Chinese gangsters who have, big drug deal going down, and then, still like one of the most entertaining facts about this film, or one of the most not facts necessarily, but one of the most entertaining elements of this film is that, Steven Seagal plays a character called Robert Burns, who is a professor, of archaeology, who specializes in Chinese antiquities. I can't remember which dynasty it says is his special
Han.
subject.
It's the Han Dynasty, I think. Yeah.
Hong Dynasty. It's the
Yeah.
Hong Dynasty.
If you need a dynasty, yeah, if you need a dynasty in a DTV movie, a lot of times you go with the Han Dynasty. It's always the easiest, I think.
It's the Hong Dynasty. He's a specialist in. Yeah. But anyway, he gets roped into. He gets framed for being part of the drug deal, and he initially goes to prison, but then due to plot mechanics, they like let him out of prison, and kind of the DA, are kind of, or one of the Secret Service agencies are basically using the professor as bait, for the gangsters to try and bring out the gangsters, and they will expose themselves. And then at a certain point, Robert Burns doesn't want to be involved, with any of this really, but then does get involved because, as with most of these films, they kill his wife. And then it's a kind of path of revenge movie, basically. And then it's just basically watching Seagal going from place to place, all of which is in Eastern Europe, but we're pretending to be in America, we're pretending to be in Connecticut, we're pretending to be in Paris, and we're pretending to be in a bunch of places. And we kind of watch Seagal it's kind of like a video game where it's like he goes through each level and there's lots of mini bosses in each level, and he has to collect like Pokemon. He has to collect all 10 before he gets to the top number one gangster. So that's the mission. Have I summed that up all right, Matt?
I think you got it. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's like you said, it's the most fascinating of the Seagal movies because every other movie, like we've discussed on here, he plays some sort of ex, like CIA, Secret Service, military, or something like that. And even in this case, they could have made him that, right? He could have been like ex CIA who quit to become get his PhD in archaeology and become a professor. But in fact, what we find out is that he was a thief who, while he was in prison, got his PhD in archaeology, and then when he got out of prison, which is an interesting use of, I guess because he knew he was guilty, he knew he was a thief, so he didn't want to be a lawyer to like get himself out of prison. He decided to do it that way. But he also would have learned Chinese, I guess, while he was in
Yes,
prison as well. Which, in the
I think
'80s,
so.
I don't know how that works because at least now you've got like Duolingo and apps like that you can learn Chinese from while you're in prison. So I guess you'd have to keep the phone in your buttocks so you don't get that. You have to. That would be great if he was like smuggling his phone in the prison and learning Chinese through Duolingo. But I guess that's another classic Seagal thing, right? He knows every language, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, he is a universal linguist. So like yes, he is familiar with any language, and can um, like Steven Seagal characters like learn language like Antonio Banderas' character in the 13th Warrior, where it's just like I listened. And like that's it.
Right.
It just like he just suddenly knows the language through kind of osmosis. So that's what Steven Seagal characters do. So I mean, he probably learnt the language in like a week.
Right.
It's fine, as we know. But I guess, like, again, coming back to kind of the entertainment value, I think the piece that you missed there, Matt, is that he wasn't just a thief. He was the world's greatest thief.
That's
Like,
right. That's right.
it's specifically mentioned by one of the characters. He was the greatest. He was the best. He's never just a thief. He was the best. And like so, it's kind of suggested that like, and he was like a high class thief. He like
Right.
stole antiquities and stuff like that. So he's very much in the kind of like the Thomas Crown, whatever Sean Connery's character was called in Entrapment kind of level of thief. That kind of thief. So he's not just your bog standard robbing people's house. No, he's like doing backflips through lasers to steal the Mona Lisa or whatever the fuck. And not only that, he was nicknamed the Ghost
That's
because
right.
nobody could ever find him, and people thought he was dead. There was whispers of him, and that but apparently everybody knows about him as well, even though nobody knows about him. Nobody knows about him, but everybody knows about him. It's very confusing, and he
Right.
changed his identity, and he managed to somehow like go through the world's crime databases and scrub his name and scrub his identity. I guess that was easier to do in the 80s, and like because things weren't connected. Things didn't like start like databases. Databases didn't start to like really connect up until like kind of the mid to late 80s. I think basically like if you were a criminal in like one state in America, you could just move to another state and they didn't know fuck all about you because like yeah. But anyway, so anyway, yes. So he was the I think like that's the thing we need to note the most because that's the thing Seagal wants us to note the most that he wasn't just any thief. He was very much the best, top of his game. And then he walked away. He just walked away. He went to prison for 7 years, and he was just like, well, I've learnt my lesson. I had a good run, and now I'm going to become a professor of archaeology, and I'm going to scrub out all my state records, create a completely new identity as Robert Burns. I don't know why. he chose the name of Scotland's national poet, but that's what he did. Maybe I like seems weird to have that as a reference, but maybe it was. Maybe it was. I don't know. Thoughts, Matt?
I mean, again, maybe he would have thought like maybe if he called himself Seamus Heaney, maybe going with the Irish poet, that would again be too on the nose. Like at least he can get. Right.
He doesn't. I guess like he can get away with Robert. Like people look at him and be like, "I'm Robert," and you're like, right. "Okay, fine, I get." But if he came away and was like, "I'm Seamus," you'd be like, "I don't think you look like a Seamus, mate." Like
exactly. I guess the other thing too is that Seamus Heaney was a professor at Harvard, right? And so he would have to be. He wanted to be Yale, right? So that's the other. Maybe that's the thing. There's a rivalry there, I guess. But I mean, I love that too. That like you can't just be a professor at any university. It's got to be one of the most prestigious in America.
No, absolutely. Yeah. He's got to be the top professor at the top university. He's the biggest expert in the Hong Dynasty antiquities. Nobody can beat him at that either. It's funny as well because like this came up. I was listening to your podcast. I always listen to your podcast. I can't remember what film you were talking about, but I remember there was a tangent you and John Cross went on about like a Scottish Seagal movie, or there was something to do with Scotland that came up. And I remember being amused by it and imagining, because Seagal always does the accent of everybody he meets. So I did think it was very. I did think it was very funny, just imagining like a Glasgow set Steven Seagal movie as Steven Seagal as Sergeant Jock McTavish, like
right. That would be. Can you imagine him like you said, like trying to like affect the accent and like he's like maybe there's like the head baddie, right? Is about to like get blown up. And he says something like like he's trying to do like an accent. He's like, "Devil take the hindmost, motherfucker," or something like that before he blows him up. And it's like,
he tries to do the like kind of Glasgow. He tries to do the kind of Glasgow accent, and he's just like, "All right, pal, enough of your shit."
Yes. Well, because we were. I know when I had Ty on recently, we were talking about the end fight scene in Out for Justice, which was one of the movies that this film takes its name from, and he was fighting William Forsythe, who's from Brooklyn, and he had the audacity to tell William Forsythe that his Brooklyn accent was off. And William Forsythe's like, "What are you talking about? You're the one who can't speak with a Brooklyn accent. I grew up here. Of course I can speak with a Brooklyn accent." And so that was another, like I could, that would be even better, right? It's like he's like telling a Scottish actor, like, like, "Listen, your Glasgow accent is off." And he's like, "Really? You're telling me my Glasgow?"
Calm down there, big man. Calm down.
Yeah. Oh God. That would be like that would probably be like probably a very similar like like a somebody from Brooklyn and being told your accent's bad, and somebody from Glasgow being told your Scottish accent. Like I almost feel like that there's a comp there where it's just sort of like really you're doing that. Yeah. Again, this is the kind of fun Seagal I think that like makes these movies so entertaining that he does stuff like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I think Stephen would be told in no uncertain terms to fuck off. Or there is a fun Scottish phrase to tell people to shut up, which is called "hud your wheesht." Would you hud your wheesht? Which just means to shut up, man. Right. Shut up.
That would be beautiful. Like the actors all are telling him that, and he didn't know what it meant. Like everyone on the set, was like,
he'd be confused.
Yes, yeah, that would be exactly. Well, I think we'll get stuck in on some of the highlights of this film here. Kind of take it break it down as we go. I mean, the movie, if I remember right, the movie starts with a massacre at I guess it's supposed to be a Russian or Eastern European strip club. But I can't remember.
Oh yes.
Is it the aftermath, or we get like the
Oh,
aftermath?
so it's very confusing. It's
Right.
very confusing, right? So basically, what happens is our two DEA agents, Tommy Ling, played by Michelle Go, and Ed Gray, played by Corey Johnson, walk into the aftermath of a massacre that has happened at a Bulgarian strip club, and then. Uh, and then like while walking around, Michelle Go, who's doing a kind of on again, off again narration, which is really funny because like it only comes in at random points in the film, and it doesn't feel like it needs to be there. But that's a side issue. She walks around, and then we get many flashbacks of how the massacre went down as she walks around where I've actually put here in my notes that Tommy has Toretto vision, which is like for people who might not get that reference. Dom Toretto in the Fast and the Furious movies, and in Fast and Furious, the fourth in the franchise, when Michelle Rodriguez's character has a car accident, he gets to the crime scene where the crash site. He gets to the crash site and then like in his mind can see perfectly how the crash happened. So that's when anytime that comes up in the movie, that's what I think of it as Toretto vision. But then adding to the confusion of it's already a bit confusing because we're dancing back and forth between these mini flashbacks and the aftermath of the crime scene. We then reverse completely and we see the massacre happen in real time, which doesn't seem necessary because we've already seen most of the massacre in mini flashback in this kind of opening 2 minutes. But we decide to do that, and then after seeing the massacre in real time, that's when we get the credits, and then we get our first scene with Seagal at a Chinese archaeological site.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and those credits are kind of hard to read because they're in this Roman alphabet script that's made to look like Chinese characters. And so I'm sure they thought it was cute. It's the kind of thing that would look great if you go to like a Chinese food restaurant and they're trying to like build up this sort of the atmosphere, but also they want you to be able to read the menu. But in a movie, especially when it's against the backdrop of like, visuals and things like that, it was like, okay, I have no idea. I'll just take your word for it that these people were producers in the movie that we have there.
And also, I should note with the credits, I do love the Out for a Kill, the title for Out for a Kill, the font that it's in very much screams like 90s arcade game. Like it's kind of in that kind of, imagine that kind of like you're in the 90s, you've just rocked up to play the Street Fighter arcade game, and that's the kind of font that we're kind of getting. Very much looks like that. Or kind of like the level of the graphics, or the title graphic is very much. It's not like a good high quality game. It's we're still kind of PS1 level, maybe. I think. I think that's where we're at. Would you agree?
Yes, no, absolutely. We're kind of in that place. I think also too the graphics when they introduce all of the different crime figures from the Chinese mafia, which they don't say triad. They just say that there's sort of this crime family or crime bosses from China. It's a similar kind of typeface, right? It's like kind of this red like. Because they have to introduce them individually and put who they are. And the funny thing is they give us things like hobbies and stuff like that. And I don't remember. Do you remember if these hobbies or facts about these crime bosses played any part later on in the film?
It absolutely does not.
Right.
I guess this was a thing of the time. You had like those kind of like Guy Ritchie movies and stuff like that, where you would get a character introduction, and then you would get like a freeze frame, and then you would get like the name of the character and some notes about the character. And I guess like in a lot of particularly kind of crime gangster films of the kind of early 2000s, which obviously this is very much in, you would get that a lot. But no, none of these things come into play. Like and like that's one of the things that makes this movie entertaining. Like the unnecessary kind of parts of this film, the parts that are the stupidest, are the things it's the things that makes this movie enjoyable. Because without them, like it'd be a hard watch. But no, I took some notes down. So we get a freeze frame intro of all the gangsters at the table. I think Seagal says at the end of the film that he's taken out 10 guys, so like it must be 11 guys at the table. So you've got a full football team there. So we get freeze frames, and now the first couple of freeze frames are quite sensible. You just get the character name and like it basically what they do, what their gangster thing is. And the kind of area that they control. And it's like, oh, this guy, he does drugs, through Paris. He's that's his area that he deals with. And this other guy, he's doing the same thing in Sofia, and he's the head of that. Oh, fair enough. But then they get more and more wacky, where we get that they get their name and their title of what kind of drug baron they are. But so one guy likes strip clubs. We find out he likes strip clubs, which is, I guess, a lot of people in DTV action films tend to like strip clubs, so I guess that's quite common. One guy, he likes auto racing and skydiving, which very much definitely doesn't come into anything. And then my absolute favourite is one guy. His little freeze frame finishes with he has a penchant for French restaurants, and I love the fact that they didn't just put the fact that they put that he likes French restaurants is funny in the first place, like highlighting that French food is his bag, but I love the fact that they wrote the sentence not that he likes French restaurants, but he has a penchant for French restaurants. That is what that makes that amazing.
Yeah, it was like, as a writer, right, like you don't want to keep using the word likes over and over again, so you try to, like you said, punch it up a little bit with penchant for French restaurants. And I when I hear penchant, like it's instead of being like likes French restaurants, like you kind of just see him in like this big, large, like cable knit sweater, maybe with like a button up shirt underneath it, and like sitting by himself, like kind of dining al fresco at a French restaurant, like with a big, huge like tumbler of Burgundy, and just sort of like eating snails, or like escargot, or like having like a salad or something like that, and just sort of like leaning back in his chair while like like a server, maybe like in a white shirt and an apron, is coming to like drop off the next course. Like that's what I see there.
Absolute. That I saw exactly the same thing. The guy, he's sitting in his favourite French restaurant. Like you say, he's maybe got a fine glass of Burgundy. He's tucking into his favourite beef bourguignon.
Exactly. Now, did you also notice that we have two crime bosses based in Paris? I think.
Oh yes, I noticed that.
11 was too many, and so they forgot the fact that somebody was already based in Paris when they were going over the second, when they were adding somebody else to it. It was like I
guess Paris is a big city. Like maybe
right.
They divided it up. Like you've got so many districts. Like these districts are mine, and these other districts are yours. So maybe that was it. They split it all up,
Yeah, exactly. Now, and so after we get these introductions, we then find out about Seagal being this famous archaeologist, and I think he was on like another site, I think, right? Or he's like, I can't remember how it worked. Or like he was, because he wins an award. That's a funny situation, right? Where he wins an award for being the best archaeologist of the year, which I Full disclosure, I got my degree in anthropology at the
Mm.
University of Maine. I had to take classes in archaeology. Nothing as cool as this. We were going to like sites of like uh, in America. I think they were in Maine. They'd either be like First Nation like Penobscot Nation. Their sites or things like that. It was nothing
Yeah, of
nothing
course.
like this. But I don't remember any of my professors being up for Archaeologist of the Year or that even being a thing. But
Fair
so,
enough. I mean, you obviously didn't go to a good enough university, but
no, right.
that's
Yeah, University of Maine was not Yale, right? None of my professors, right? None of them were going to be up for that kind of thing, unfortunately, for them. So yeah, but I can't remember if he was in the field once and then he goes out to China to do this one archaeological dig, and that's where he runs afoul of the gang because we know that there's one based in Shanghai who's moving product, I guess, out of Shanghai to other parts of the world.
yeah, yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah, so
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 I think
he's doing his archaeology work here. The interesting thing, so as an anthropology major, where we would learn about archaeology because they were kind of tied into the same department. The number one
yeah.
tool of the archaeologist is the Marshallton trowel. They essentially just scrape the ground because you can't just get in there with a shovel, right, and start digging. I think Heinrich Schliemann, he was looking for Noah's Ark, and he discovered like all kinds of stuff in Turkey. He's known as being like one of the biggest butchers as well as an archaeologist because he was just like digging and he was like destroying like layers of history as he was trying to find Noah's Ark. But we don't see Seagal with his Marshallton trowel, but it is kind of tiered the way an archaeological site would look. So at least that part is kind of close to the bone or close,
It
close
does.
to.
It does look like an archaeologist.
Yeah.
I guess to be fair to it, it does. Like everything's kind of tapered, kind of tapered off,
Yeah.
kind of taped off like an archaeologist. It's like because like there used to be, I used to be quite like before I decided to do journalism at uni. Like before I made that decision. There was a period of time where I was young where I thought, oh, I might do archaeology, and like there was so I have some familiarity because there used to be in the UK a TV show called Time Team, which was an archaeological TV show that was hosted by Tony Robinson, who used to play Baldric in Blackadder, but was also the host of that show. So, little random fact of British British TV for your listeners there. Not that they probably care. They're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? We don't care about 90s British television. We didn't see it. We don't want to.
Right. Getting the Spotify Wrapped, so we do well in the UK. We have a lot of UK listeners, so there's a lot of people listening to this episode who are probably going like, I remember that show. I know exactly what he's talking about. So don't fret on that. There's definitely an audience for that. And the other thing I think is when this movie, unlike some of the other ones we've covered, where usually they just grab as many UK actors as they can and fly them out to Bulgaria and do the scenes. And so the background that you're able to provide on that is always good. But unfortunately, this movie doesn't really have a lot of that.
Well, it does have in one instance. So, like, and I can only imagine that this movie is like longer somehow, and like there is a subplot, like awkwardly very cut out of the movie, a subplot that I feel like should have been completely cut out of the movie because the fact what remains of it in the movie makes very little sense at all. So basically, like you said, with the archaeological site, things go wrong. We discover that like Robert Burns opens one of the I can't call him Robert Burns. No, I just can't do it. I'm just going to call him Steven Seagal.
Yeah, call him Seagal. That's fine.
The fact that his name is because all I could think about is the Scottish national poet. Anyway, Steven Seagal's character opens the box, finds out that some drug smugglers have very awkwardly ran in and put some drugs in amongst the antiquities. Seagal's character is basically being framed. He goes to prison, and in prison, he meets a fellow prisoner who introduces himself as King.
Right.
Now, the character of King, and again, this is where British pop cultural knowledge comes into play. The character of King is played by a guy called MC Harvey. That's how he went. I don't actually know his proper real name. But I think it's maybe in the credits, but I didn't
Oh,
check.
yes, so it's
But
actually Michael Jr. Harvey is his real name.
Michael Jr. Harvey
Yeah.
is his full name,
Yeah.
but he was known as MC Harvey, and he was part of a group, a garage group called the So Solid Crew, who had a couple of hits in the very early 2000s. Their biggest being a song called 21 Seconds, which, yeah, and the So Solid Crew, there was tons of them. I can't remember how many members there was, but there was a fuckload of them. Yeah, it felt like a never-ending, there was even more. I think they had even more members than the Wu-Tang Clan. So maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. But anyway, 21. So that was a hit in 2001. They had a couple other kind of songs that hit big, and yeah, yeah. So that one reached number one, and a couple other ones, and then they kind of faded. They kind of fizzled, because like the garage scene was very very popular for a few years in the early 2000s, but it kind of fizzled out, and it's never really kind of regained popularity in the mainstream, whatever the fuck we consider the mainstream now. That's your one nugget of like random British pop culture that I can bring to the table for this episode.
That's awesome because yeah, we find out because when they discover the drugs, right, in the thing, and there's like a chase because when Seagal discovers the drugs, he's got his associate with him, his co I don't call her adjunct professor or something. Not an adjunct professor, but like his assistant, played by Elaine Tan. He's like, hey, we need to get out of here because there's drugs in here and it's probably not going to go well for us. And so they take out, they get like a Suzuki Sidekick or something. They start driving away as fast as they can. And of course, the baddies are chasing them as well. And they're trying to get across the border because they're is it near Kazakhstan? Is that the border they're near?
Yes, it's the border between China and Kazakhstan.
That's right. And when he gets arrested, when he's in the cell with MC Harvey, it sounds like MC Harvey did the same thing. He was like trying to smuggle weed across to Kazakhstan, which
he was trying to So this is why the subplot should have been either we should have got the director's cut that included this subplot, or we should have totally got rid of this subplot altogether and just have like a brief shot of like Seagal in jail, then him being interrogated, then him being out of jail. Yeah. Because what happens is one of the weirdest things you'll see in the movie, where King starts describing how he got caught on the Chinese-Kazakhstan border trying to smuggle marijuana into Kazakhstan. And then, as he is talking, we get a fade as if we are going to go into a flashback which shows this happening. It shows him being arrested on the border of Kazakhstan, which shows this going down. But we don't. Instead, it fades to Seagal's character getting a visit from his wife, which is one of the most confusing things I've ever seen in a you watch enough movies and you're like, I understand the cinematic language. I understand that where the voice is still happening and we are fading out into a flashback. But fuck no, we're just fading out into another scene where Seagal gets a visit from his wife. It's utterly bizarre. But again, part of the bizarre entertainment of this film, I guess, because it did make me laugh out loud. I was like, the first time I saw it, and also this time as well, I was like, fucking nuts.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like you said, it's like and the way that she finds out, the wife finds out that he is in prison in China, is that she just happens to have the news on this little TV set in the kitchen. And it talks about the fact that this famous professor, which, again, archaeology professors seem to only be famous in movies. I don't, if you were going to ask me as someone who studied archaeology in school to name 5 archaeologists off the top of my head, I would have trouble with it. And that's somebody who studied archaeology. But the fact that there's all these famous archaeologists that they would be, newsworthy. But she hears the news, is like, oh, I got to fly out to China, and like you said, he's talking to King, and then she's sitting there with him in the interrogation room, and she's just there, like, oh, I guess for moral support. The thing that I would have loved, I don't know what you were what your thoughts are on this, but the thing that we needed in Seagal being in a Chinese prison is we needed a scene of him making toys for kids in like America and Western Europe, like maybe stitching together like Simpsons stuffed animals or something like that. But I guess Seagal, we would never get that. But that would have been the best. It's like he's like there, like working in some kind of sweatshop or something. Which my understanding is a lot of toys that we get in America are made by political prisoners in China. So yeah.
I think that's maybe too much of a kind of socialist commentary
Right.
for this movie.
Yes.
I don't think politically either Seagal or Emmett and Furla lean that particular direction. So I can't imagine that we would get like any anti-capitalist themes through this movie that was apparently tax sheltered in Aruba, as we've discovered.
Exactly. So from here, right, we get the sense that that of the two cops, right, these two DEA agents that we have, that one of them is nice, and that's Michelle Go's Tommy Ling. She wants to get to the bottom of things. She knows that he's being framed. She knows he's not guilty for this, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. And then Corey Johnson, our jerk meathead cop, who is like, no, he's guilty. What is it? He has all kinds of different lines. Like he's like, if I find out that Seagal is innocent of all this, then the Pope's wearing panties, and it's like,
yeah.
First off, like what does that mean? Like what? Like yeah, the Pope like couldn't possibly be wearing panties. He could. We don't know what the Pope wears under those robes. But also,
that's true. We have no idea. But,
right. But also, that's not really a check that you can cash. Right, like you could be wrong about this, and it wouldn't mean that the Pope's wearing panties. It should be something more like if it's like that expression, "I'll eat my hat." Right? If I'm wrong about this, I'll eat my hat. It's like okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think obviously they had like the kind of ones that like I'll eat my hat or when hell freezes over, those kind of typical lines, and they thought, oh, like we don't want to be too obvious. We don't want to use one of the typical lines. Right. We're going to make up one of our own, and it went badly. Right. I'm not going to lie, it went badly. They didn't win that day, but then they were like, what do you come up with? Well, if he's innocent, then something about the Pope wearing panties. And they were like, is that the best? You've been at this all day. Is that the best? Sorry, I got nothing. I got nothing for you. That's what I thought of. Fine. Well, we'll leave it in.
Yeah.
Like we're not happy, but we'll leave it in.
Exactly. That was what they had. But yeah. So now Corey, sorry, not Corey. Well, his character's name is Ed, but we'll call him Corey.
Ed.
Yeah. He of these great lines. He calls his bosses back in the main office, and this is a classic thing that we see in Seagal's movies, right? Is these ideas of these higher ups in government positions, almost what would now be known as the deep state, right? We'd call them the deep state in conservative conspiracy theory parlance, but doesn't care about the little guy, and it's just like, yeah, let's use him as bait, but what about his family? Fuck him, and like that's the exact word he uses too, right? Is fuck him, and so that's it, fuck him. So Seagal goes back to America. He's trying to kind of get his life back on track, but I think he was investigating things a little bit, right? He's trying to kind of get a sense of what's going on, but then him and his wife go to eat in. It's not in Chinatown, is it? It's not a Chinese restaurant. They're eating at, I think, like a Italian restaurant.
No, he goes to Chinatown later, but like
right.
that initial restaurant scene isn't in Chinatown. It's just we just kind of cut to that restaurant. We don't see them kind of arriving at the restaurant, so we don't really know geographically where they are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention about the chase before was the bullet cam that we get from Oblowitz. So he.
I was going to cut back to that at some stage, but like But yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, because, the previous film, Foreigner, there was a lot of Matrix-style stuff that he used
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And so this is probably the most egregious, I would say, where it's just like bullets, like individual bullets, we're watching them slowly fly into the back of this SUV. And it's sort of like dotting the SUV with holes, which is really, really kind of an interesting approach. But it was like, later in the film we don't get as much of this kind of thing. It's almost like they went with it here and then they said, you know what, that's good enough. Let's we don't need to do it for every scene.
That's true. And also the CGI on it's real bad. Even by 2003 standards, it's real amateur. So like maybe
Right.
they saw that CGI and were like, yeah, no, I don't know. I guess we said we'd use it this one scene, but yeah, maybe we'll not go with that with the rest of the movie.
Exactly. Well, because there's also some green screen stuff that's used in this that's really bad too. I mean, there's
Oh, there is some awful green screen. Like later on in the movie, when the characters of Ed and Tommy are two DEA agents who are just kind of bumbling about in the sides of the movie. Yeah, there's a moment when Seagal is flying about with the guy Crash and interrogating Crash, and they like look up to the sky, and they're supposed to be on an airfield, and like that's terribly green screened. They're definitely not on an airfield, and they're definitely not looking up at any sky. But there's a couple of those moments where you're like, "Woof, this green screen." Even by 2003 standards, and I guess you got to try and put your mind frame back to like, that was like over 20 years ago. But even by the standards of the day, it was very very ropey.
well, I mean, by the standards of like, local television in the 2000s, doing the weather, right? Like, I mean, just like
That's
your
true. That's
goofy,
true.
like, going back to me being from Maine, a goofy Portland, Maine weather guy, with the worst. That was one of the things. Like, kind of a quick aside, where I grew up. I grew up right between Portland, Maine, and Boston, Massachusetts. And so you'd have like the slick graphics of the Boston TV channels, and then like the cheap kind of hominess of the Portland ones. And there's always a sense, growing up where I did, of which were you? Were you more Boston or more Portland, Maine? Which one did you want to be more? But you could never really be either, right? If you like, when I lived in Portland, Maine, it was like too small towny, even though I grew up in a town that was like a lot smaller. But it just was, felt like it. But then if I would move to like a city, like I'm in Philadelphia now, I definitely know I'm not from a city, like when I live here. So, but yeah, by Portland, Maine, 2000s weather report standards, the green screen was bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, I think that's a good illustration of just how bad it was.
Yeah.
I think we should also mention that, like, when he goes back home, like, because we keep track of all the Seagal tropes. Um, and when he goes back home, one of the Seagal tropes is, I don't even know if you would call them lovemaking scenes, but like awkward sexualized interactions is probably my best description of them.
Yes.
Happen in Seagal movies. And weirdly, I don't know why, this has happened in more than one film, where instead of like a sex scene, what happens is a woman comes into a room, Seagal is sitting on the edge of a bed, the woman then removes her top, they embrace in an awkward, sexualized kind of hug, and then we cut to the next scene. I like, it's weird. I guess like a full sex scene would be even weirder and even creepier. But
Yes.
I don't know. Like, I've never seen it in any other movie. Like, it's like a Seagal specific thing. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why they go with that choice. And like, presumably it's a Seagal choice and nobody else's. But it's awkward for us at home to watch. I'm sure it's awkward to film. Everybody feels weird and kind of creeped out by it, and I don't know. And there's something also like weirdly exploitative about it. Like even more so than a lot of other films that like have like fully naked women. Like I don't like there's a layer of kind of sleaze and creep to it that really makes my toes curl and just kind of ugh. You know? Yeah. So yeah, I just thought I thought I would raise that because to keep track of the Seagal tropes as we do.
Yeah, because that one, you're right. Like, it's funny. I was when I had John Cross from After Movie Diner on to talk Inferno, a Van Damme film. It's interesting how Van Damme goes in the completely other direction, right? Van Damme is like he's naked, he's showing his bare butt cheeks. The woman's naked. It's almost like this softcore like Skinamax scene when he has his love scenes. We were joking that it's the kind of thing where like when you're watching a Seagal movie, that's the scene where your parents walked in, right? That to like get you for dinner or something like that. Like, hey Matt, how you doing? Oh my God, okay, okay, I'll be, what are you watching? I thought you were renting a Van Damme movie. I am. It is a Van Damme movie. It's not a porn. It's like, so he goes in the completely other direction. Dolph was more like just normal, right? His love scenes were normal. But Seagal, you're right. It's almost like it, kind of because him and Van Damme kind of always get, you always kind of compare the two.
Yeah.
Where Van Damme is like, hey, I'm this muscles from Brussels, and I'm going to just have all, let me have so much sex with all these women. Seagal was just like, he wanted to show that he was the man and hooked up with women, but it was so awkward that it was almost like, I think from a film standpoint, they're like, we can't use any of this. Like whatever it was that we've shot here, whatever we're doing, let's just cut right away and just everybody else can just use their imagination, which you don't want to use your imagination. I don't want to think about Seagal doing any of this kind of stuff, but it's kind of like the exact opposite of what we get from Van Damme.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I guess that it's something to do with action stars. And I'm sure, I mean, a lot of these action stars are noted for having various relationships with various women. And yet they look very awkward filming sex, most of them.
Yes.
You get yeah, Schwarzenegger sex scenes, yuck.
Okay.
Stallone sex scenes, no, not at all. Lundgren, right. No. Again, very awkward. Occasionally you get somebody like you say, like Van Damme. He's good at them. He seems enthusiastic about sex scenes, yeah. And there's a couple others like Jason Statham. He's fine. Sex scenes with him seem fine. He seems quite natural doing sex scenes. And then you've got some of your European types, some of your like Antonio Banderas types, which he seems very natural in a sex scene, kind of stuff like that. But yeah, no, a lot of action stars have real trouble with sex scenes and seem really unnatural, really awkward. Like they can't even conceive of sex. They've never seen a woman before. And it's weird because like I know most of them have. I know most of them have seen many women. But yeah, no, it's very strange. It's a phenomenon that I think a lot of action fans know, and none of us quite know why it is the case that so many action stars are quite so terrible at sex scenes, other than like some of the ones I've mentioned, and also like most of the actors they get for Bond and stuff are very comfortable with that kind of sex scene and stuff like that, So like your Pierce Brosnan, he's fine, he looks fine and natural, but yeah, no, most of them, I don't know, because I used to think it was like an American thing, like because it like more of the European and British action stars don't seem as weird with it, but I think it might be more general than that. Maybe it's not just an American, but because obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger's not American, and neither is Dolph. So that really blew a hole through the whole Americanness of it. But yeah.
Well, you make it like the Pierce Brosnan one. I think with the Pierce Brosnan, I noted this when I was doing Live Wire with Will from Exploding Helicopter. And our episode was actually called Two Non-Bonds because it was like movies that James Bond actors did that that were DTV movies, after the fact. And the one thing I noted about Pierce Brosnan is, especially when in the '90s when he when he was doing the Bond movies, he was just so good looking that I think for a lot of the actresses doing the love scenes with him, they almost felt like they were the ones who were lucky. Right, like and I'm sure you must be able to read that if you're Brosnan, like, oh, this woman feels lucky to be doing a love scene with me, so yeah, I'm happy to kind of make it work.
I know what you mean, because I remember on our podcast when we covered the three '90s Bond movies, like we definitely noted that. I mean, like when Pierce Brosnan is on the screen, like just sex is just coming off of the screen. Yes. Like like he has so much. Like I'm not gay, but like I want to be with Pierce Brosnan. Yes. Like because he's so entrancing. I mean, he's ludicrously handsome. Yeah. Like right, exactly. The sex appeal is absolutely palpable. And whenever you watch one of those '90s Pierce Brosnan action films, so I get it. So it all seems natural because of that, I guess. Like, and I guess like there's certain action stars like Pierce Brosnan or like Antonio Banderas who just have like a natural sexual swagger to them that you're just like, yeah, this guy fucks. Exactly. To be crude about it,
Right. Well, I was gonna say about Banderas, and maybe this is where people can check off their prestige, indie cinema mark off their bingo cards for our episode here. But he comes up through the acting world, doing Pedro Almodovar films, and
that is true. Yes.
Those movies are so sexual that it's like if you can't get comfortable doing sex scenes in his movies, then you're not gonna be able to do them anywhere. And I wonder, maybe that's what we needed. We needed all of these guys to do some Pedro Almodovar movies, and then like they could suddenly be much better at it.
Oh, like. No, I can't imagine. There's a not. I'm not like. I definitely can't imagine a lot of action stars, doing a Pedro Almodovar. And it's not just the artsiness. It's like Pedro Almodovar has that kind of very arch, quite often quite campy humor, to his movies, and particularly like. God bless him. Like, I love Stallone. I love him. I love the Rocky movies. There's a lot of Stallone movies, and I think, he has shown. I'm not like dragging him down. I think he's shown that he can be a talented actor. He's shown that he can be a talented writer. But there's certain things he just can't fucking do, and like kind of like that kind of like arch comedy. It would absolutely flummox him. Like that, he would absolutely fall flat in his face attempting that. So there's definitely some people that I can't see in a Almodovar type film.
Yeah, I was gonna say because what was it? Javier Bardem, right? He does Live Flesh. That's his movie. It seems like him, Banderas, Penelope Cruz. They kind of come up doing those movies. But you're right. Like any of them, right? If you put Stallone in Almodovar, it's just like hey, yeah. So this scene here, you're going to have a love scene with this older lady, and in the scene, right, somebody's going to fart, and that's and it's just like you wouldn't know what to do with any of it, right? It's just the kind of craziness that he puts in his movies when he puts things together. I'm kind of behind on his movies. I realized the last movie of his that I watched was Broken Embraces. So I think I'm like 6 or 7 movies behind on.
Oh yeah, no, I'm very sporadic on Almodovar. I've seen a few of his films. I've not seen all of his films by any means. I can't remember. I can't remember the last Almodovar film I saw. It might have actually been. I don't know where Broken Embraces is, but it might have actually been The Skin I Live In.
That was the one that came right after it. Yeah,
I think it's like a kind of it was basically a quasi remake of Eyes Without a Face, which is good. I would recommend it. It's not as good as Eyes Without a Face, which is a kind of horror classic. If people have not seen that, it's kind of French horror classic from the 60s. Very, very good movie. And I would highly recommend that people watch that. Yeah. I didn't I like. Wow, we're getting very random today. Well,
Yeah,
I've mentioned Time Team and Eyes Without a Face. I was definitely, what the fuck is going on? Anyway.
exactly. It's Mark again. I'll mark them off the bingo card. And so actually, kind of more. I guess we think of prestige cinema, thinking of Kurosawa with samurai films. We have a sword fighting sequence at a funeral. I completely kind of forgot about this. Before we get to that restaurant sequence, Seagal attends his assistant's funeral, which his mentor was actually her father, and this guy taught him everything he knows about archaeology in the Han Dynasty and Chinese antiquities. But while he's putting the incense down for her, these two monks, who we think the monks are just there to kind of help out and do the service, but no, they've got swords and they're ready to take Seagal down, and he has to dispatch of these two monks, these two sword wielding monks.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, this fight isn't that bad.
Right.
There's like a later sword fight where Seagal. It seems like there's not a lot of Seagal. Basically, you get a kind of shot of like somebody's back, and you just get like their hair and like one arm, and you're like, yeah, that's probably not Seagal. But actually, you get quite a bit of Seagal in this fight, and there is the wire work is not amazing,
right?
But I mean, but it's fine. It's fine. It's not laughable either. It gets funnier later in
yes.
the scene we've kind of been bigging up. But yeah. So like, in terms of the shoddiness of this film, it doesn't go in the shoddy count. Actually, it goes in the better count of like, this is actually an okay kind of fun fight. It's not going to win any awards, obviously it's not a House of Flying Daggers or anything, but like it's fine. It's
well, and what it is it does for Seagal DTV, right? If you're grading on that curve, this is I until we get to Attrition, the movie he does relatively recently, where it's kind of more of like a Hong Kong-ish kind of movie. Between now and then, we don't get much of this. So it's almost like you got to take it while you can. You got to really.
Yeah. No. For sure. This
right.
is one of the better fights in the movie. I think, the two guys who are kind of dressed up like Shaolin monks kind of thing, probably do the heavy lifting in the scene. They're
right.
they're jumping about, they're flinging themselves about, and kind of really going at it. But Seagal quits himself all right, and in terms of that, what you call the kind of slap chop fighting style, he does that, and he does it well.
Exactly.
This is definitely one of the better fights, and definitely one of the better sequences in the movie.
And then we also, with these guys, right after he dispatches them, he notices that they have Chinese characters on their arms, and he tells us what they are. I don't remember exactly what these two were. It doesn't really matter that much. I guess at the very end he uses them to get into a safe, but he gets a sense of like, okay, people have Chinese characters on their arm, and it's supposed to mean something. But the best part, I think, is the fact that he tells us what they are in his Seagal voice. It's like, down the river, or something like that, or up the river. It's like, okay, all right, that's fine. But yeah, so there's
it's above a river. One of them is above a river.
That's right.
Because I've got the full sentence with the
Oh, you did? Oh, you got it. Okay.
I got down the full sentence to be revealed later on, because obviously, just like in the movie, it's kind of a mystery, It's like, what is this sentence? What does it mean? It doesn't mean a whole lot, but like it's something, and it works kind of. Anyway, apparently it's supposed to leave. It doesn't really leave clues. Like it's kind of suggested throughout the movie that these tattoos are like leaving clues to kind of discover people,
Yeah.
but actually the sentence doesn't seem to lead anybody to anywhere. But it does at the last minute have some use, because I think the screenwriters were like, well, I guess we've kind of bigged up this sentence. This is one of the central mysteries that we've been seeding throughout the movie. We've got to make it mean something.
Right. Right.
So it does mean something in the end, but it's all quite convoluted, and it doesn't do what people says, what people are saying. It does, which is apparently to kind of geographically locate people. Which, I mean, I don't know how you would geographically locate people based on things like the crane above a river. You know, like what the fuck kind of directions is that? Anyway, like if we were to pick holes in this script, I think we'd be at it all day.
Exactly. Well, so because Seagal has survived this attack, these Chinese gangsters at their round table are not happy about this. They keep referring to him as a guilo, which of course is a derogatory term for white guys. There's a indie movie from Melbourne, Australia that director Nate Hill has been on the podcast before. He did a movie called Revenge of the Guilo that kind of has some similarities to this in some ways, but yeah, so we got to take this guilo out. Who is this guilo? Who is it? And it's funny too because they kind of go back and forth between speaking English and speaking Chinese to each other. But the head guy, I don't know if you noticed, like the head guy, whenever he spoke in these like very like breathy, exaggerated, halting tones. Like he was like trying to chew scenery and wasn't sure how to do it.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. Yes, he was very much. He was like. I don't mind when people choose scenery, and I don't mind when people are kind of self-consciously a villain, like a movie villain. But yeah, I don't know if he was quite. I don't know if he's quite hitting the right note of like, the kind of overacting baddie. But yeah, no, he's doing his best.
Yeah. Well, and so now they decide they're going to ambush him at the restaurant. This is where we get the restaurant scene, which. If you go on the IMDb page, you get one quote of the movie is, "I have to go to the bathroom." And so while they're at dinner, they're sitting at the table, Seagal and his wife, or his character's wife, he just says, "Yeah, I got to go to the bathroom." And he just stands up and leaves the room. And that's when the baddies come. And, they come in, they've got guns, they start, shooting up the place where they try to kill Seagal. He's dispatching them. His wife is actually really good at this, so she must be used to him getting ambushed because she does a really great job of getting underneath the table or having the table to protect her. But one of the things, out of all the stuff that happens, it's a pretty good action sequence in terms of fights and a lot of Seagal slapshot and stuff like that. But the thing I loved is that he gets the baddie. He's got him holding his gun. And he's like swinging the guy around while the guy is just firing at all over. And it's just like this like thing of like just shooting bullets everywhere at the patrons who are just trying to have a meal. So I love that Seagal, he's supposed to be Mr. like badass who can take anybody out, but he's having so much trouble with this one guy that like he almost kills the entire room.
Yeah, no. Like absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say he makes a real meal of it, but then I was like, oh no, that's gonna sound like that was an unintentional pun in my head. And then when just before I was about to say it, I was like, oh no, that people are just gonna assume I'm doing puns. But no, I'll take that. I'll take the pun. Yeah, yes, that's what he did.
So his wife is like, what is the deal with you? How do you know how to do all this stuff? And it's like, and I think this is the moment where we find out who he is. It was either this or the one before it where we get the info dump where the DEA agents are doing the research, and that's where we get the info dump about how he's the best criminal ever, the best thief ever, the ghost.
It's not long after. It's kind of just after the fight at the funeral.
That's right.
Yeah, where we get. One of the gangsters, I think his name is Silo. He gives the information. He gives the info dump about like how he was nicknamed the Ghost and he was the greatest thief in the world. Yeah. So that's where we get that.
Now at this stage we go back to Seagal's house, and we know from the previous Oblowitz Seagal film, The Foreigner, that Oblowitz likes to blow up buildings. Unfortunately, this is not anywhere near as fun as the sequence that we had in the previous movie, right? With the baddie there who's like easy, and Seagal's taking a leak, and we get Seagal going to the bathroom, I guess, and only this one he's not like taking a piss, like he's actually just leaves the room and goes to the bathroom. But yeah, I can't remember what made Seagal have to leave his house. I guess like maybe because there's a break in or.
No, there was like a car alarm going off outside.
That's right.
And he was like, "Oh, look, I'll go and investigate what the car alarm's all about."
Yeah.
That's why he was outside the house when it blew up. Which is definitely less impressive than the explosions in The Foreigner, because it's clear a lot of that's green screen, and it's clearly CGI flames when he's looking at it.
Yeah, and we assume this means that the wife is dead. Because even though, like you said,
she never comes back, and
right.
and he keeps going on about how people have killed his wife. So yes,
right.
we're assuming the wife perished in the fire.
Right, because like you said, like it's so badly CGI that it's like hard to know if she but also too at the end of the movie when Seagal is like rooting around the baddie's lair while the place is on fire, he seems completely undeterred by the flames there. So it's like fire can be different things at different times in these movies, right? Sometimes it's just a little bit of fire can kill somebody. Sometimes the fire can just linger and it's just there for effect. So, but yet, like you said. We find out because now he's a man on a mission. He goes to meet with his mentor, and it's kind of funny too how like when he goes to talk to his mentor, it's like, yeah, I wasn't gonna go on a revenge path when it was your daughter who died, but now that it's my wife, I'm gonna avenge both of them in one go. And it's funny that the dad's like doesn't say something like, huh, interesting how you care now that your wife, but you didn't care when it was my daughter. He's just like, all right, well, it tells this expression, right? When you go for revenge, you've got to dig two graves, which sounds cute enough. But now we know, right now, this is like, Dolph is, he's or no, not Dolph, Seagal is he's all in now. He's got to take these guys out.
Yeah, so a couple of points on that. I mean, I guess that's like a famous phrase
right.
about like, if you go for revenge, dig two graves.
Yeah.
But in that metaphor, one of the graves is for you.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, clearly Seagal is not going to go because he's invincible in these movies. And he is very confident of his invincibility. Yes. So, like, the metaphor doesn't work in a Seagal context because, like, the metaphor is a kind of, it's basically saying revenge is futile. Right. Because like you're killing the person, you're killing yourself. There's nothing good that comes out of revenge. That is basically what the phrase is saying.
Yeah.
Whereas like this film is not saying that at all. Right. This film's like revenge solves everything, and also cutting to like the Seagalness of this. I love his fucking confidence because, like, he says to the father of his assistant that he will have this finished by the end of the week in time for his wife's funeral.
Right.
7 days. He's given himself a timetable to bring down this various Chinese gangster families that the DEA have apparently been trying to bring down for literal years. 7 days he's given the timetable for that, and fuck me, he completes it. Yes. But because it's a Seagal movie. But I love that. I love that little fact that we are just all the things, the travel that takes place in this movie from America to Sofia to Paris, all that, and all the chaos and carnage, and all the people who are killed, it's all completed in 7 days. In fact, it probably completed in 6 days because he had to fly back from Paris to Connecticut for the funeral, which takes quite a lot of 1 day. That's like a day travel there. So it's probably you're probably talking 6 days really. But because you have to travel to Europe and you have to travel back. So it's maybe even 5 days. I'm just saying, like, he's doing it on a swift timetable. That yeah.
Yeah. Well, and fortunately, he does have a place nearby he can start because it just happened that the pilot who was flying him and his assistant out to the job site or the dig site in Shanghai, or I guess out near Kazakhstan, that guy, because that's the link, right? Because he knew that they were flying him out there and he was going to be flying drugs back. That guy's nearby, so he could start there, right? And he makes it seem like he's a buddy with this guy, and he wants to get some flying lessons. So apparently, the crime bosses didn't tip off the pilot, or no. We find out they did. That's right. I completely missed this here.
Oh yes, they did. They did tip off.
Right, because they were going to set him up. So the deal is that he flies he goes in the plane with the pilot, and he starts like taking control of the plane. So it does these really long dips, and he's essentially interrogating the pilot to say like where do I need to go to get my revenge for my wife? And the guy finally tells him it's the barber in Chinatown. Okay. That's it, And of course, this is the bad green screen as well because the DEA agents are watching this plane flying up and down, and while they're in front of this bad green screen, making it, joking about the fact that he's getting information that they can't, because police officers never torture someone to get information out of them. That's never happened before.
Absolutely not. That's never happened. We would never, on this podcast, impugn the integrity of any police force or Secret Service agency, particularly now when given the people who are in charge of things, and God knows who they'll come after and how far it'll go. So so we would never impugn the integrity of any of America's security agencies, and we will swiftly move on. God bless America.
Exactly. So instead, Seagal does the work that they can't, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. They have to get like an outside agent, which apparently they're totally comfortable with, despite the trail of dead bodies. They at least, and also they're the DEA.
Right.
Like, they're not the fucking CIA. Like, why are they getting clearance to investigate in Sofia and Paris? Like, I thought they were like a domestic. I guess I'm putting too much logic in this, but I thought they were like a domestic agency. Are they international?
Well, no, because I think sometimes, in some cases, I think. Now I don't know about Sofia, but like for example, parts of South America, they would call in the DEA to help them with drug investigations. But I think it's like the FBI sometimes same thing. It's like they might work in conjunction with other groups, or it's almost like one of those things where America is so big and powerful that sometimes for these countries, it's almost like, hey, if we let America come in and play ball, we'll get benefits from that. So let's just let them do it.
I guess so. I guess so. Maybe it's not too silly, and maybe although at least the way it's portrayed in the movie, it looks like in Sofia they're just literally doing their own thing. At least in Paris, it feels like they have notified the French government what they're doing, and we meet up with like a French police officer or whatever. So it does seem like I know that joint investigations do happen, so it does seem at least that they're in a kind of joint effort with the French government. We see no representative from Bulgaria. So presumably they're just maverick, going their own way, having their investigation, and the Bulgarian government know fuck all about it.
Exactly.
Which, fair enough.
Exactly. Now, I think we're getting up on the scene that you wanted to talk about, right? We're getting close.
Yes. So, basically, it's a setup. So, I guess, the two things that I want to mention is in the flight, we get one of the best quotes in the movie, where he says to Crash, "Do you think I'm crazy?" And Crash goes, No, I don't think you're crazy. And then then dramatic pause, and he goes, no, actually, there's not a dramatic pause there. He goes, wrong answer. Then there's a dramatic pause. Yeah. I am crazy. And then he dips the plane. And the way he delivers that line in his typical stiff Steven Seagal way is quite hilarious. And then, yes, we get to the barber shop, and we realise that the gangsters had basically told Crash to tell Seagal's character to go to the barber shop. So it's like a setup so the Seagal can be attacked. And you actually said that like there's not as many British actors in this one, so I can't give any random facts. And that is where you're wrong, Matt, because most of the Chinese gangsters are played by British actors, and
Okay.
and one of them who plays the barber in the barber shop. I've seen a number as a kind of like random character actor in different British popped up in British TV programs, including one famous episode of Father Ted. So there we go. That ticks off one of the requirements of our podcast that I spot British actor. I'm like, I've seen his face before. I don't know his name. Definitely seen his face before. I think he was in actually like a British comedy or something. He was. He was in that one episode of Father. It's a funny episode where people think that Father Ted is racist, when he's not. But anyway, it's a very people have the American listeners have not seen Father Ted. It's a very very funny Irish sitcom that was on in the 90s. I don't know if it is. I don't know if any of it's problematic now. I've not watched it in a while. But it was very funny at the time. I think it probably still stands up, even though the creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan, is a complete tool, who, much like J.K. Rowling, has just committed down the anti-trans rabbit hole, and has become a complete arsehole, even though he wrote several very funny programs back in the day, including that one and the IT Crowd and Big Train. Anyway, that was a rather long tangent to cut us back to the barber shop, where Seagal is fighting a guy who's doing kind of he's doing this kind of monkey style thing. I guess because sometimes you see this in kind of kung fu films or whatever, doing this kind of monkey style kung fu where they're jumping around. But the wire work is so funny, and because like he's just like, I think it's the contrast. I think what makes this scene so funny, so good, is the contrast of like the wire work is so hyperactive and so all over the place. And we've got this guy, and he's like crawling the walls, and he's up, and he's up at the ceiling, and and all this, and like Seagal is so static, barely moves. In fact, initially when the fight starts, he is fighting the guy who is flying around him while still seated in the chair that he was going to get his hair cut in. And then eventually, with great effort and a kind of huff, he kind of gets up out of the chair, kind of grumpily, kind of like, I was like, I wish I could have done the whole scene fighting this guy out of this chair, but I guess I have to stand on my own 2 feet. Huh. And then he does, but then again, he doesn't really like kind of move around much. He just kind of statically waits for the guy to come at him, and then eventually he does, and he can like throw, he kind of catches him with this kind of long piece of material, and then kind of wraps him up, and then chokes him out with that. But it's truly, it is something that needs to be seen to be believed. I think that my description of it is an outline of why it is so funny, why it is one of the great scenes in cinema. But I think you really need to go onto YouTube and check it out for yourself to get the full dramatic impact.
Yes, and also on IMDb, you usually get like the fake trivia for Seagal. There's somebody who writes these hilarious fake trivia pieces,
Yes.
and he wrote it about this scene. He said, "This is the quote from this fake trivia person. After seeing 2002's Spider-Man, Steven Seagal stalled filming for several days because he refused to shoot the barbershop fight until production found someone who could actually crawl on walls, quote, like Spidey." So that's the fake trivia for this, is that he wanted that. I mean, the other thing that I love about this scene is that you've got this guy doing the monkey stuff. He's crawling around the walls. It's the bad wire work. It's all that kind of stuff. But whenever he engages with Seagal, it's just your classic slap chop stuff. So it's like
Yes.
he does all this monkey foo, but yet he doesn't do monkey style when he fights Seagal. He just sort of stands up and does like the traditional stuff. And so it's almost like they're just having it there just to have it, just to show it, which makes it even funnier that it's just like you've got this guy doing monkey style, but he doesn't use it on Seagal. He's just sort of, and the other thing too is that he uses the monkey style like literally as a monkey. Like when he's not actually fighting Seagal, when he's standing there, he's like kind of like itching himself the way a monkey might do when they're like trying to get nits or something off them.
Oh yes, they very much literalized monkey style kung fu to the max. He's even like the way they've kind of shaped his beard and hair and stuff as well. It's even kind of like monkey. It's not quite like monkey like the program monkey.
Right.
But it's getting there. It's getting there in that kind of like I don't know if that's a deliberate reference to the show, but yeah, I mean they kind of styled them like that. So
Yeah. And I was trying to think out of all of the films that we've done so far, Seagal's films. I mean, there's a scene at the very end that was the one that kind of got me to want to, that was the one that was kind of my quest to see this movie again, was that last scene that we'll talk about here. But I feel like this scene, out of all the ones we've seen so far, I mean, this has got to be, I was trying to think of what the other ones were that would come close to this, but I don't know if there's anything that really tops this, like you said, kind of for the viral goofiness factor.
yeah, no, I mean. I think the only thing that comes close, and I don't think it's as good, but the only thing that comes close to the kind of viral goofiness factor is the exploding watermelon in Shadow.
Oh, right, yes. That's right. Yeah, especially when you combine the exploding watermelon with the student who wants to learn how to do this style, and he smashes that poor guy against the wall as well. Yeah, because I was also thinking, from the previous episode in The Foreigner, where we were talking about that scene in the bathroom, where the guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I guess yeah, they would be the two, the easy scene and the exploding watermelon.
Yeah. But this is memorable. I mean, this is why people watch. We were talking about Seagal and like the problematic elements about Seagal. But this is why you watch DTV Seagal, is for moments like this, and these are the kind of things too where you're watching these things with your friends, and they need to see the scene again, right? You have to rewind it and come back to it because it's just like, what did we really watch here? What is going on here? And it is like you said, Seagal's just either sitting or he's just standing there with his Seagal hair. He's getting husky. He's not as husky as he's going to become, but he's husky enough, So he's not classic Seagal. He's this huskier new version with his hair and all this stuff. While this other guy is like itching himself like a monkey and bouncing around. And then he starts crawling on the walls, and it's obviously a wire that's doing it. There's also almost like a Dirty Dancing ballet, like end scene, where he grabs the guy and they're kind of twirling around, and it's almost like they're like Family Guy reenacting the Dirty Dancing, end sequence or something like that. It's all the beautiful things that like you said, it's one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history. It's when the moving pictures were invented, they had no idea that this was something that people would do with it, but this is what they did with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I say, I don't know if I can describe it any further, but like it's truly, it is truly what you watch the Seagal movies for. It is these moments, like the moments we've just discussed, the exploding watermelon, the easy, this also like the deception begets deception, like with the same character in an earlier scene. Like these are the moments that you hope for in the Seagal movie, and like they're really funny, and they're really amazing to watch, and they are the things that you're like, yes, this is the exact reason I sat down to watch this. This is the exact reason that I want to talk about it on a podcast. is these moments. These are the moments that we kind of live for. And I think, unfortunately, from what I've heard and read, um, we get a lot less of these moments going forward, particularly once you get into the 2010s movies, which I've not seen any of the 2010s movies, although the DTVC stuff, the DTV stuff I've seen of him has always been like in that kind of like when he started doing them mainly in 2003 through to 2009. I've seen quite a few of those now, but not so much in the 2010s. So yeah, yeah, and I hope that we have more of these. But I don't think I'm not sure anything can kind of top this moment, to be honest. There is one scene in this movie that's kind of close to it, your favorite from the end. But yeah, it's a magical moment, and the rest of the movie can't really compete with it.
No.
To be honest, even though there's a lot in this movie, and I think like one of the things we haven't mentioned is throughout the movie, and I guess I mean there's stuff we can probably skip over. Like there's a lot of the kind of investigation stuff with Tommy and Ed that is kind of like it's just there. It's just filler. It's just kind of like we got to we got to fill out these kind of 85 minutes. Like we've got a bunch of action sequences. We don't have a whole lot of story. We've got a big story about the Chinese gangsters and kind of revenge plot and whatever. But we feel like we need to fill it out because like we've only got enough for about an hour. So like we'll fill it out with this detective stuff and all that. But also one of the things we've not mentioned is like how kind of we're doing like a bunch of like a kind of grab bag of kind of like we've got like a bit of kind of semi-matrix stuff. We got like a bit of like the Bourne Identity came out the year before. We got a bit of kind of Bourne type stuff. We got and it's all very and it's super early 2000s. Like whoever edited this film was clearly like a massive fan of like Tony Scott films and was like I'm going to do that but worse. Like, because like there is, and like there is a lot of quick cuts in the movie, which I guess was the style at the time because I guess like a lot of films were edited like a Tony like a kind of Tony Scott thing. Although I guess like Tony Scott only became like super quick cuts into the early this kind of time period as well. Everything kind of kept getting faster. But like one of the most insane cuts in the movie happens not long after this. We have some of the investigation, and there's like a car chase, and in the car chase we like do quick cuts between the chase itself, random explosions that are happening. And it cuts to the kind of the high table where all the gangsters sit at, and like the head gangster is just kind of laughing like an evil gangster laugh, like kind of like that. And like it just flashes in between those for like microseconds in between those for like a minute or so, and it's like it's head spinning to watch.
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when that one happens. Is that it's not, is it not it's
So
not
it's not long. It's not long after what we just witnessed. So with basically, we kind of move on. The investigation goes to the investigation goes to Sevilla. We cut back. We end up back at the same strip club that we were at the start.
yes.
Then Tommy investigates a tattoo shop. I'm not quite sure why we know the tattoo shop. Like one of the strippers goes in the tattoo shop. There's a connection to the tattoo shop. I'm not sure how it's connected. That they're connected to the Chinese gangsters, but they are. And then we get like a random scene where like a topless woman is getting tattooed,
right.
which I think is just kind of like, there's we've not had enough toplessness in the movie. Anyway, we'll do that, and then we get a lot of quick cuts. Tommy's kind of doing more investigating. Oh, yes, that's right. Ed gets kidnapped.
Yes.
And then yeah,
Right, 'cause-
and then we get like Seagal kind of doing yeah, he's wandering around, and then he kind of comes to the rescue. Oh, and then we have that big fight, and then yeah, Tommy gets her best line in the movie where she has a fight with the tattoo artist, and then has the one liner, "Tattoo this bitch."
That's right.
And then after that, the car chases.
Right. Yeah, because what happens is, right, when she's investigating the tattoo parlor, uh, Seagal's got his own like leads or whatever, and so then, like you
Yeah.
said, when Ed gets kidnapped by the baddies, she is like trying to pretend that she wants to have a lesbian relationship with one of the tattoo artists so that she'll sell her heroin, and
Yes.
then they discover they're onto her and when they're in the place, but at the same time you've got Seagal who is supposed to be his 50 something, even though he's playing somebody who's like 45, but he's supposed to be in his 50s, overweight self. But a much slimmer, trimmer, more athletic version of him is scaling a water pipe up to break into this building. And that's how he saves the day. He essentially saves her before she gets captured by the baddies. And then he goes down and they rescue Ed and they kind of break out. And that's the kind of thing there. And like you said, the car chase happens there where, yeah, we get, just random, Sophia cop cars flipping over and blowing up. Like you said, interspersed with this guy laughing at all of that. And so, yeah. And to your point, too, about the fact that there's more of a, there's like all these different styles. I think that also is where the fight choreographer, you know, sorry, I had his name up. Yeah, I've got all my tabs here. Chiho Lao, because when he goes to confront that one guy in Paris, who's like laundering money, or was he laundering money or counterfeiting? They just had a whole bunch of money on because he goes into a back
laundering
room.
money.
Yeah, actually, it was a laundromat, wasn't it?
He was laundering money, and I remember this because yeah, no, I remember it because like Ed makes some cheap joke about like laundering money in a Chinese laundry or
That's right.
Something like so. Yeah, like so he's laundering money. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you get a really good fight scene that he has with that boss. I don't know if that's not Silo. It's like another one of the bosses, but he's
No, Silo, because when he goes to Paris, like yeah, it's Silo counting the money because that's the fight. That's the fight that has the really funny beginning. That's another kind of classic point in the movie where he like gets up off the table, and then like they both wander up to each other, Seagal and Silo, and then they both punch each other, and then we get like this close up of the fists colliding,
right.
much like the boxing gloves at the start of Rocky IV. You know, like, like, and again, it's one of the several moments in the movie where you're like, are they deliberately making a parody of an action movie,
right.
or like, is this incompetence? Is this is somebody like? It's something like, actually, no, we've made this as a comedy, but we've not told Seagal. I'm not, like, because there's certain moments like this that are so heightened and so kind of parodic that you think, like, this, like, there's, because it keeps cutting back and forth to the high table, and, like, it's funny because, like, there's just less and less people at the high table until it's like literally just like the head guy and Silo being like, nah, well, a lot of empty chairs. Maybe we should have just put the chairs away. We don't need these chairs anymore. Well, I don't know why maybe we're keeping them in honor of our fallen comrades. Maybe that's what we're doing. If you die, if you're one of the chair members, when you die, we keep your chair out of respect for you. But it's just, again, it's just kind of, it looks funny. And there's lots of, and like the fist collide and all the other things we've talked about throughout the movie. It's just like, I feel like somebody was making an action movie parody, but just didn't tell everybody else. Certainly didn't tell Seagal, but maybe didn't tell anybody. We're like, no, I'm gonna secretly make a spoof action movie, but what's going to make it even funnier is I'm not going to tell anybody I'm making a spoof action movie. I'm going to say to the cats that we're making a serious action movie.
Right. Well, and I think Seagal's the perfect patsy for that kind of thing, right? Because in this fight scene, like you said, where the two fists get together, leading up to that, you've got the Silo is kind of getting his self together in his kind of kung fu style, right? So he's like
Yeah.
aiming, getting his poses together, and then Seagal is doing all this chi stuff, kind of harkening back to Shadow Man, right? Remember where he like Tai Chi'd people, like Tai Chi'd the watermelon, he does, and so he's getting his like Tai Chi focus here, almost like Ryu or Ken getting ready to throw a Hadouken. He's like balling his arm up and getting all this Tai Chi together, so that when their fists come together, I guess we're supposed to believe, because the guy goes flying, right? When their fists go together, he goes flying. We have to believe, I guess, that Seagal, who not only is an archaeologist, a master thief, but he's also this Tai Chi master to this level that he can gather up all this Chi force to be able to make his fist so much stronger than the other guy, so the other guy goes flying. But yeah, that's what it is. And then from there, like you said, it's like this mix of like Matrix throws, Born Identity stuff, the more traditional Hong Kong stuff, and essentially it's just this guy getting thrown all over the place. He's getting thrown into piles of money. He's getting thrown into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess like just a classic kind of Seagal, classic Seagal moves and the classic Seagal fight style, and like the kind of fight you see in a lot of Seagal movies where he's just basically throwing somebody around. I guess yeah, I guess we didn't mention there was an earlier fight where he throws somebody through a window. So
that's right.
like that's a big tick on the Seagal trope list. Somebody being thrown through glass of some sort. And also, like going to my theory that somebody was making a spoof movie and didn't tell anybody. There is a scene just before Ed is shot and killed.
Yes, I was going to mention this. This is good. Yes.
So, like, they kind of make it, they signpost that Ed is going to die.
Right.
Because, like, they kind of fade out, the color grading of the screen becomes more grey, and then we have like a close up of Ed's face, kind of random close, but like it's not like he's in the scene and we close up onto his face. We get like a kind of cut to like just another scene that's got a kind of his face kind of big across the screen. And then I guess like this is the kind of thing that sometimes when people die in movies, like the person who is grieving the loss of their partner or whatever will have like a flashback scene to like a sentimental moment that they had with the person. But oddly, we do it in reverse order where Ed, it appears, is having a sentimental moment in his own head, thinking about a time where he was telling Tommy about fishing and maybe kind of teaching her to fish, and talking about fish. And then he comes out onto the street after this haze of sentimental nostalgia. He's still in the kind of cloud of nostalgia about fishing, which is why why the gunman got the jump on him, because he had only just come out of the haze and he was like, oh fuck yeah, I'm in Paris on an investigation, so I shouldn't be thinking about fishing at this moment. Fuck. Oh, is there a man with a gun? Oh god damn. Oh, he's too quick. Oh, I'm dead. Right. That's what and it's utterly bizarre. It's utterly bizarre. It's done in completely the wrong order. And also, it's not Tommy having the sentimental moment. It's Ed having a sentimental moment about himself. So.
Right. And then to make it the cherry on top is that it's done in the style of the last scene of The Usual Suspects, right? Where
yes.
You see the character. The movie's almost 20 years old. I don't know if I'm giving anything, or almost 30 years old, I should say. I don't know if I'm giving anything away by saying what happens at the end, but it's like there's this voiceover where it's like, oh, he made the world, he's so evil, he made the world believe he didn't exist, and all of a sudden it's kind of the slow motion of the walking and then the limp turning into the not limp and all of that, and the shattering of the glass. It's like in that style, only it's just this guy's face. But the way that the voiceover is going, it's in that Usual Suspects last scene version. And I was wondering if we were going to find out that maybe he was like in on the stuff, or he was like the real Silo or something like that, and but no, he just
Yeah,
comes out
you would think that. You would
yeah.
think, because it is done in that style that suggests that, like, maybe we're going to get information that he was like one of the gangsters, or maybe he was the real power behind the throne, or whatever. But no, it's not. He was just having a sentimental moment about fishing. Yeah, and it's weird as well, because like it's like the second reference we get to The Usual Suspects, because like when Robert Burns' wife finds out that he's been arrested in China, we get like a slow motion coffee cup drop, just like we get in Usual Suspects.
Right, it
So
doesn't
like
break. It
weird,
doesn't break.
weird second reference to The Usual Suspects in this movie. So yeah, again, we're just doing like a rag bag of like, we're taking a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and like, but it's not done in like a kind of like smooth Tarantino style of like, kind of, neatly weaved together. No, it's just a completely just throwing pies at a wall.
Right. It's like somebody going to a buffet, right, and just grabbing
Yeah.
stuff and throwing it on the plate. And yeah, to your point about the Usual Suspects thing with the cup doesn't break. And I wonder if the cup was supposed to break, but
Yeah.
because it didn't, they were just like, let's just go with it. It's good enough. We get the effect there, even though it didn't break.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true. I think, cutting back to our earlier comment about the kind of Pope and Panties line, I think it was just a case of like, well, we tried.
Yeah.
We tried, man. It was, making movies is hard. Fuck you. Like, like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's what, we don't have the budget or the time to do anything else. We'll deal with it.
Right.
We'll work it out in post,
Right,
That's
exactly.
what we'll do. We'll work it out in post,
Yes. Yeah, which, to be honest, that could be a way that they could have sold Seagal on the fact that this was supposed to be a serious movie when it was a joke. Just keep telling
Oh,
Seagal
yeah.
the whole time, we'll figure it out in post. All right, man, I'm trusting you,
Yeah, yeah. This seems kind of silly. Nah, it'll be fine. Once we get that final edit locked in,
Yeah.
you'll see.
We'll work it out in post, yeah.
You see.
Now, I guess
So we're nearly at the end.
I was gonna say, yeah. So he's taken out all of them but the last one, and so just in case we weren't sure if we were in Paris or Sofia, right? The building he goes into is written in English, so the sign is in English for the place he's going into, because I guess in Paris you gotta have a lot of signs in English. But the place next door says like auberge or something like that, so that's French enough, right? So you're not really in Sofia, you're in France, if you're wondering.
Oh, yes. And also we know we're in France because we have met a French detective who
Right.
comes up in one scene and is doing a very Inspector Clouseau type accent. I don't know if he was French or not, but anyway, whoever hired him said they do the most stereotypical French accent anyone has ever heard, so people understand that we are in Paris.
Yeah.
So that's that happens.
Yeah, his name is Lieutenant Luc Breton, and it's Luc spelled L-U-C, so you gotta be that.
Of course he is. He has a Breton.
Yeah. He doesn't say where he's from, but I don't know if any his name is Chris Pavlo. That's his name, which does not sound like. I mean, he doesn't necessarily mean to be. He's not French. He could have been, because I know, like, could be from.
Could be, could be next. That who knows? It doesn't necessarily mean he's not French.
But I don't see him playing another French character in anything else. Everything else is just it's either the name is an English or Anglo-Saxon name, or it's an Eastern European name. So my hunch is that maybe, I mean, Pavlo is not. I mean, I was going to probably, when we get to the end, mention about the Bulgarian 94 World Cup team, but usually with the Bulgarian actors, their names end they end in the letter V. It's either EV or OV, and Pavlo doesn't count there. So
I'll put it this way: I've clicked on his IMDb page. And in his kind of known for credits, which, I mean, known for seems a stretch, but in his known for credits, he was in 2 episodes of EastEnders, which people don't know is a famous British soap opera. So I'm going to say not French.
Right. Yes.
Going
bury the
say
DJ.
90% probably British if
Yes.
he's in EastEnders. Apparently, his character, he was in 2 episodes in 1994. He played a character called Barry the DJ. Don't remember that, but anyway, so
Yeah.
so he was a side character in 2 episodes of EastEnders. So
Yeah.
probably not French, which is why his accent is like that. And apologies to any French people who may listen. The movie started at first, and also it's fine. It's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind if you want to do if you want to get your revenge, you do a silly Scottish accent. It's fine. I am perfectly used to the fact that people who do Scottish accents either go for Groundskeeper Willie or Shrek, never an actual Scottish living person. So it's fine. I'm used to that. So it's okay. It's okay. I think as long as you're doing accents, if you're European and if you're doing accents of other Europeans, I think you can get away with it.
Yes.
You can get away with the comedy accents. That's how I feel about it. But like I say, if you want to get your vengeance, do that. Do your silly Shrek accent that way, and I'll be perfectly fine. I laugh at that.
Exactly.
But anyway, we finally get the sentence. The sentence we've all been waiting for. The main mystery. So the sentence is sorry. I'll do it my best BBC voice. The crane flies above the river peacefully. No, sorry. I'll read that again. The crane flies above a river. Peaceful surface hides danger below. There we go.
Perfect.
That was our sentence.
Yeah, of course, right on cue as you're doing that, sirens come by, so I had to mute myself while you were doing that. But yes,
That's fine. I think the second or third take I tried of that. It's harder. This kind of audiobook thing is it's harder than you think. But that was the sentence. And literally, the only thing that it provides Seagal's character is there is a bunch of kind of buttons kind of on a wall that have Chinese symbols, and if you press them in the correct order based on the sentence, it opens a safe. But that is not what we've been told the sentence was supposed to do. What we were told is it was supposed to point them in the direction of where the high table is, which it singularly fails to do, but it does open a safe, so I guess they did give it some purpose in the end. And I mean, like this, because the guy who is the head gangster is he's never portrayed as like a martial artist. He's never portrayed as a physical threat. So, like, this last sequence is a bit of a wet squib, just because, like, it's like, well, yeah, we know that this guy is not going to pose any physical threat to Seagal's character, and he's never particularly shown as being like super smart either. It's never like, because there's certain like Seagal villains, like for example Eric Bogasian in Under Siege 2. At least he is shown to be kind of clever throughout the movie, and you kind of always kind of believe him in his whole kind of smartest guy in the room kind of shtick, because he does a lot of kind of 90s hacking stuff, where he furiously taps things on the computer and you're like, oh wow. So you kind of buy into his kind of like, I'm a super smart guy. Whereas this guy doesn't necessarily seem super clever. Seems like his plan is falling around him at all times. And he's definitely never seen as being like physically opposing. So it's just like, okay. And I guess, he does throw an explosion at Seagal, and that temporarily kind of stuns him for a second, but then he composes himself quite quickly, and then I guess I guess I should give you the honors of explaining what the fate of the gangster is, because I know this is your favorite sequence.
This is it. So this is the scene that I turned on USA Network, saw this is a Seagal movie. This is the sequence that I tuned in for. So that the baddie has discharged or is made an explosion. He's running down the street to his car. Seagal's figuring out, what am I going to do to stop this guy? Because I've just been dazed by this explosion. I've got to do something. He sees a set of swords on the wall. I mean, I said it was a samurai sword. It's not really a samurai sword. It's more of a Chinese sword. But he grabs one off the wall, goes through like a partition or something into another room, opens up a window, and looks down at the guy before the guy gets in the car. The guy looks back at Seagal. And Seagal whips the sword sideways, just throws it down. And this sword, sort of in a mess of bad CGI, is spinning at this guy, beheads him. Now, on USA Network, it just ends at the beheading. We just take the beheading for granted. But what you get on Prime or an uncut version is that head then rolls onto the ground next to him. So it's even better. It's even more amazing.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
I don't know. Also, like, I'm not quite sure. It seems like such a movie moment that he looks back. Like, I don't know why he can, I don't know why he just doesn't just run away and then just quickly get into the car and fuck off.
Right.
But he can, and like, it's the way he looks back as well. Like, the way he looks back is almost like a cartoon villain. It's almost like Skeletor, like, next time, He-Man! Like, why? But, I mean, why? Because, like, he has to be decapitated. But, but it's so fun. So, like, the whole thing of it is hilarious. The fact that, like, Seagal just opens the window, like, just ajar, and, like, can barely throw the sword out of the window, and the way that, the guy looks back with his, like, cartoon villain, and then the way the rubber head flies off his body and rolls on the ground, everything about it is absolutely hilarious.
Well, because it's the kind of thing that if this movie didn't have the monkey-style wire work fight earlier in it, this would be the thing the movie would be hanging its hat on, right? This is the sequence.
This is what it would be remembered for. If it didn't have the barbershop fight scene, this is what it would be remembered for sure. I think it is overshadowed by the absolute bonkersness of the barbershop fight scene. But yeah, no, this would be the highlight moment. This would be your kind of moment of like, oh, well, yeah, movie was terrible, but it was worth it for that sequence. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it ends the movie at a high note, and what happened was, of course, was that I couldn't find this movie after. I didn't know which Seagal movie it was, and of course, no like descriptions of the movie mentioned that sequence, and so I was like, well, so I think Into the Sun was one of the ones I watched. There was a few that I watched, like hoping it would be it, and it wasn't. But finally, this was it, and I was just like, oh, and to your point, it was like all this time trying to find it. I don't think I mentioned this in the review because I forgot to read my review before because I would have reviewed this back in like 07, 08. So it's been like a good 15 years since I last reviewed it, last saw it probably. I don't think I've seen it since I did the review for it. But all this time trying to find it for that one scene, to know that there was another scene in the film that was even better is just even crazier, I think. And it kind of gives you a sense of how bonkers this movie is, but how much fun it is on that level.
Yeah, and I honestly, I would have been quite happy if the movie had just ended there after like Seagal gets his stuff out of the safe. We get like a kind of tacked on ending where we're at the wife's funeral, and like it feels real weird. It's weird on a couple levels. It's weird because like there's a kind of semi-suggestion that Tommy the detective wants to hook up with Seagal at his wife's funeral, and Seagal, Seagal, like, he doesn't exactly say this, but Seagal basically kind of was like, no, maybe in another lifetime type thing, right. But not right now. He doesn't seem all that broke up about his wife that he's been doing this path of vengeance for, but that's just because of Seagal's emotional range, I guess. So it's weird because of that, and then, like, I don't know about you, but I watched this on Prime, and like I understand that sometimes in movies, things are said in languages that are not English, and they're not put in subtitles because they're later relayed to us in English in the movie. However, certainly on Prime, Tommy and Seagal's character Robert Burns have a conversation like a couple of at least a minute long conversation where they are talking in what we assume is Mandarin or possibly Cantonese. I'm not sure. I'm not a linguistic expert, but it's not translated. It's not. There's no subtitles for it. We do not know what happens in that conversation. And then like they basically are like cheerio, and then it's like cut the credits, and we're like, oh okay. I guess we're supposed to assume that they had some conversation about like what we're just talking about like the not the best time to hook up. Um, yeah, but we don't actually know. And then we end on some narration about like, oh, I you know I never she could never really know Robert Burns. She could just never really know him. She's never met a man like him before, and she'll probably never meet a man like him again. And that's how we end the movie.
Exactly.
And again, that's the typical way to end a Seagal movie on how great Seagal's character is.
Right. It was like it reminded me of the movie A Christmas Story, where at the very end of the film, Ralphie is there with his Red Ryder BB gun, and the writer Gene Reynolds, I think his name is. He's comedic writer. He's doing the narration, and he's like, it's the greatest gift I'd ever gotten or ever would get. And it's like kind of almost said in that same way of like greatest man I've ever met or ever would meet. And it's like okay, so, yeah, and then we get the credits in this English script or this English written, this written with this Chinese style script. And this is kind of where my mention of the Bulgarian World Cup team from '94 comes in, because I think 21 out of the 22 players on that squad, their names ended in the letter V. And I always kind of get a kick out of when I watch these credits roll, how many people on the Bulgarian staff's names don't end in V, or if they're female, they ending in the letter A. I always try to see how many. Sometimes you get like a Polish name mixed in or a Russian name, but it's almost, again, it's like that Bulgarian soccer team. Risto Stoichkov, I think, right? Was a big player on that team. Risto Stoichkov.
That's right. That's right. I never. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation. I'm not sure if it's Hristo Stoichkov or just Risto. I'm never quite sure. I used to call him Hristo Stoichkov, but I don't know if that is correct or not. So I'm not an expert on the Bulgarian language. But I certainly watched him play enough. He was a very good player back in the day. Very, very good player. He might not be as well known now as I'm never quite sure if like people remember. There's certain players that I really remember from the 90s, and I think any 90s football fan remembers, whether it be a Hristo Stoichkov or a Davor Sukor or a Georgi Hadji or or a Pavel Nedved, but which were really big players in the 90s, but again maybe not quite as famous as like a Ronaldo or a Louis Figo, or whatever, but yeah, or a Zidane, but yeah, certainly memorable footballers from my childhood, but I don't know how well known they are to people now. Yeah.
The thing with Stoichkov was that what happened with him was that '94 World Cup run that he went on. I think they were semifinalists, I believe, right?
I think they made the quarterfinals.
Oh, they made the quarterfinals. Okay, yeah. And I remember when they started the MLS in the U.S. I think it was in '96 they started the MLS. They tried to bring some of the more memorable players from that World Cup who were kind of towards the end of their careers or were looking for something else. And Stoichkov, I believe, was one of them. I think, or maybe he came a little bit later when they started the Chicago team, so it may be more like '98.
No, you're right. No, they were. They were. You're right. They were the semi-finalists, but then they got beat in the third place playoff by Sweden.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. Because no, I do remember that now. Because yes. Because I remember being, because it's always like when you're younger, I guess. Even now, I guess you tend to root for the underdog, and I remember when in the quarterfinals they beat Germany. That's like it's a big memory of that World Cup. That World Cup's very memorable to me because like it was like I would have been not quite 9. And I was a little bit too young for the 1990 World Cup, because I would have been like 4.5. So like being like 8.5, that World Cup is really memorable to me, and it's the first World Cup that I would have watched like nearly every match of that World Cup. So it's like I remember quite a lot about that, but I'm sure your listeners aren't that interested. I guess we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I'll say quickly myself that was the World Cup that got me into football. And I always joke that's why I'm an Arsenal fan, was because that World Cup he played for the Dutch team, and that Dutch team was playing in our area because they were, this is the U.S. World Cup. So their whole goal of that World Cup was to make more American football fans, and at least I was one that they
worked for you.
It worked for me, right? I think it's been. I think what it took to really make it grow here in America was the rise of the EPL. I think you have a lot of Chelsea fans, for example, here in America, which that's like my nephew. He's a Chelsea fan. That's because of that sort of that 2000s rise of the EPL. That's really where a lot of American fans have come from. So that 94 World Cup didn't. We'll see with the 2026 World Cup. We'll see now that we have a lot of football fans in America. Maybe what it'll be like. I think the one thing that it'll mean for people coming from abroad is that it'll be harder for you to get tickets than it was in '94 when you were coming to America wanting to see your team play. Now there are a lot of Americans like myself. I'm just gonna go to the games here in Philadelphia just to go to games, just to say I went to a World Cup game, and so that's 1 or 2 tickets that somebody from that country that I'm going to be seeing play, whoever it is, won't be able to go, won't be able to get. So I think there's going to be a lot of that happening this time around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope that maybe one day the World Cup will come here. That actually, I think it was just last year. Yeah, just last year, the women's football World Cup came here and was hosted by Australia and New Zealand. And because my partner's Italian, we went to one of the Italy games. Not that she likes football at all, but basically my one way of convincing her to go to a football game was like, come on, support Italy. And we went to see Italy be absolutely demolished 5-1 by Sweden. But it was a fun game, even though it was not the result we were rooting for. Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, it'd be cool if the men's World Cup was hosted here as well. But unfortunately, I don't think that'll happen anytime soon, because it's like, it's US and Canada and Mexico next, and then I think it's going to go to Saudi Arabia at some point, despite the fact all the problems with that. But yes, I guess that's something to get into at another time.
Yes, I will say quickly. I don't think they've ever hosted a World Cup in Oceania. Right?
No, they've not. No,
yeah.
It's never been here. The men's World Cup has never been here. It's been kind of everywhere. It's been everywhere else, but not in this side of the world.
Yeah, I should remind the listeners that you're originally from Scotland, but you live in New Zealand now, so that's why we're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
right.
I live in Wellington.
Yeah.
I'm from Edinburgh, but live in Wellington.
Yeah, because I say probably the listeners might be thinking like, what? Didn't England win the World Cup that was hosted in England? And it's like, yes, right, yes, there was a World Cup in the UK at one time, but yes.
That's right. There was a World Cup in the UK, and the English never shut up about it.
Right. Well, the thing I remember about that '94 World Cup was that both England and Scotland didn't make it, and I think there was like a joke. There's a couple other. I think France didn't make that one as well, and they were joking about making like another group for the teams that didn't make it in Europe, because there was some big names that didn't make that World Cup, and so
that was even although Scotland now make a habit of not turning up at World Cups,
right.
there was a period that we regularly made it to the World Cup, and we consistently between the years of 1974 and 1990 we made it to every World Cup in that time period. And '94 was the first World Cup we hadn't qualified for. quite a long time. And then we would make it to the next one in 1998, and then we would never qualify for another one again. But hopefully, maybe we will qualify for the next one in 2026. I guess, before we go, a last quick story where one time I was at a talk, a recording of a football podcast, and it was in Edinburgh, and one of the people on the panel was a guy called Graham Poole, who is he's a journalist for a paper called The Scotsman. He's a football journalist, and he was like, he just missed it. He joined The Scotsman not long after the 1998 World Cup, but he was like, he was saying to the audience, well, at the time I thought, well, I'll probably get lots of other opportunities to cover Scotland at an international tournament. And the next international tournament that Scotland qualified for was the Euros that was technically Euro 2020, but actually was played in 2021. So, from 1998 to 2021, we didn't qualify for a single goddamn thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I know there was a few times where there was the groups were bad. I mean, recently, right, you were in the Euros. Yeah, and it's one of the interesting things too about because the UK.
Yes, we've qualified for the last 2 Euros. What was technically Euro 2020 played in Euro 21, and then Euro 2024. So we qualified for the last 2 Euros. But.
Yeah, so it's starting to kind of. I know there's always been talk about different things that Scotland football might do. Like, for example, I know there's talk about having kind of similar way that the teams in Wales play in the EPL, maybe having Rangers or Celtic play, as part of the yeah.
No, I know it's never going to happen. It's never the SFA hates the fucking English FA, and an English FA fucking hates the SFA. Every Scottish team. I'm a Hearts fan. They come from Edinburgh. That's one of the Edinburgh teams. And everybody moans about Rangers and Celtic because they win everything and they've got 10 times as much money as anybody else. It's just never going to happen. I mean, I think a lot of Scottish clubs want to get rid of Rangers and Celtic, and Rangers and Celtic, have often threatened to take their ball and go home and go to the English. But it's never going to happen. At the end of the day, the Premier League and Rangers and Celtic, it's never going to be happening. They talked about it for decades. Literally, I've heard talk of this for over 25 years, and it's never got any closer to being reality in those years. So it's been a major talking point since at least the mid 90s. It's maybe even closer to 30 years. I've been hearing this chat, and it's not going to happen. So put it to bed, give it a rest. Just shut up and get on with being in the Scottish game instead of thinking you're above the Scottish game. God, Celtics and Rangers are annoying. But anyway, this is turning into.
We gotta mark the football conversation off the bingo card, right? We gotta mark it off there. Yeah, so we definitely did that.
That's right. That's part of it. That's scheduled out as part of every episode. This segment. Oh yes, Scott just moans about Scottish football for a while for no reason. Is it connected to anything? No, it's just something he tends to do.
Right. Well, also, Mark, we talked about football. We talked about prestige cinema. I think we've hit a lot of the marks on this episode.
We've hit the notes. We've hit all the notes.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, as we're wrapping up, Scott, any other thoughts about this film in particular? Out for a Kill, not Out for Justice. Out for a Kill.
Not Out for Justice. Right. Out for Justice, much better.
Right, exactly. That's the whole point of the name. Is I'm supposed to say Out for a Kill or Hard to Kill. I'm supposed to get them mixed up.
Supposed to get all mixed up with it. Yeah,
right.
I think that's absolutely part of the marketing plan.
Yeah.
No, I don't have anything else. I think we covered everything. I think I've covered all my kind of thoughts and feelings on the movie. I think everybody knows what my favourite parts of the movie are now. Anyway, I think if you are a Seagal fan and you like the Seagal tropes, Like I would definitely recommend it. It's definitely like a fun. It's definitely a very fun movie. And I definitely think it's one to track down if you've not seen it before. But yeah, that's basically my final thought.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think, for Seagal DTV, especially with this one being on Prime, most people have Prime in some way. But also Freevee, which I guess they're going to be sunsetting Freevee soon, but Freevee also has it. So it's on some free streamers. It's worth it on that sense. Or if you ever see it, used at a DVD store, definitely pick it up. This is all the things that people talk about with bad Seagal DTV. It's like this is kind of the pinnacle maybe of bad Seagal DTV. Like the other ones are Pistol Whip or Foreigner. They might be more fun in certain ways, but this is kind of like everything that you know of about bad DTV Seagal. It's kind of all here in this one package.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You've got bizarre fight sequences. You've got all of the kind of Seagal ego stuff. You've got like a overly convoluted plot. You've got subplots that go nowhere. Like it's everything you want. Everything you want from like a bad Seagal movie. The kind of exact thing people have in their head of what they think a Steven Seagal movie is, like in the kind of worst possible terms. That is this movie.
Exactly. Well, on that note, Scott, as we're wrapping up, anything that you want to plug?
Oh yes, I guess. Like if people aren't aware, if people haven't listened to my previous experiences, I am the host of a podcast called All 90s Action All the Time. We cover 90s action movies. I don't know when this episode goes out, so we might have. Well, I don't know if it goes out in December or January. So either we're covering 94 films and wrapping up that, or we're starting our 1995 season and we're going into that. And also, I've got a podcast I used to do called New Horror Express, where I interviewed horror directors, writers, actors, all sorts, novelists. And there's about 185 episodes of that. I don't do it anymore, but I wrapped that up this year. So you can check that out on newhorrorexpress.com, and All 90s Action All the Time can be found on all your podcast providers.
Yeah, and there will be links in the podcast description as well. So people want to find them. They can definitely pull up your phone and look at the description and click the button. If you're not already subscribed, you should be subscribed. And this episode will go out and as we're recording it, it's going to be Tuesday. But for people listening, there'll be enough of December left that they'll catch the last December episode before we get into 2025.
Perfect. Okay. So, very great.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Scott, for coming on. This was another fun conversation.
Thanks again for having me on, man.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back soon.
Direct to video, kind of